Welcome back to the Lost Ledgers. We are joined here today, of course, by myself, Shawn, Justin below me,
Hello.
and Adam at the bottom. We are not joined by Zach.
Hi.
Zach had to take the day off. But today is a very special episode. We are doing our first complete class workshop. And the class that we're discussing today is Adam's, the Hemoturge. Adam, why don't you give us a little quick rundown on what the Hemoturge is to you?
Sure. So the high level overview of this is that I was reading a Reddit thread where somebody said that it was impossible to make a balanced caster with Constitution as their casting stat, and I was like, that doesn't seem right. And so I made a Constitution based class. And it's turned into a lot more than that. But this originally came out of my desire to prove someone on Reddit wrong, as I think many good things have. And I personally would like to just start reading because we've got a lot of material to cover, so I don't want to waste too much time.
We do have a lot of material to cover. Was there anything that you wanted to say real quick, Justin?
Um, like many things, I'm glad that such greatness can come from pure spite.
All right. Well, on that note, Adam, we're going to just go ahead and jump into the content today because, as Adam said, there is a lot of it. So go ahead and jump on in for us.
The Hemoturge. An elf in dark robes ducks behind a corner, making a quick cut on his palm with a dagger in his other hand. The blood flows quicker than it should, pulling away from his hand and forming a dart in the air that launches itself around the corner towards his enemies. A human in leather armor holds up her shield to block an incoming mace, and her body surges with power as she pushes back against the blow, turning her foe's momentum into an attack of her own. A half-orc in tattered clothes finishes an incantation and is already Ray's skin turns suddenly ashen and cold as a gout of flame erupts from his hands. A dwarf walks alone through the chaos of a battlefield, unarmored and unbothered, laughing wildly as blows glide off of him with little effect. All of these are Hemoturges, who use the power in their blood and flesh in ways that are unknown to most and unnerving to even more. Hemoturges have an unparalleled amount of control over their own bodies and know how to take advantage of the weaknesses of the flesh in others. There is power in the body. Above all, what a Hemoturge knows is the tremendous amount of power and energy stored in the flesh and blood of living creatures. Through intense training, or sometimes inborn skill, Hemoturges have taken that premise to its logical conclusion. If there is power within, it must be possible to harness that power, intensify it, and even turn it outward into the world. At a fundamental level, these are the things every Hemoturge practices, taking the power already present within their body and manipulating, magnifying, and redirecting it. This manifests in a wide variety of ways, though. Joints twisting at unnatural angles with uncanny speed, wounds knitting themselves shut as soon as they are inflicted, or whips of blood lashing out at an assailant. This is the essential truth of the Hemoturge's creed. There is power in the body. The only question is what one chooses to do with that power. Creating a Hemoturge. Hemoturges are often found at the outermost edges of society, where a sense of propriety has fallen away in favor of some greater need. Your character may have learned the basics of Hemoturgy from a teacher, or they may have discovered an inborn talent for it on their own. Were you an apprentice to a hedge witch who derived power from her own body? Did you discover the rudiments of this unseemly power alone in some life or death scenario? Are you proud of this power that most flinch away from? Or do you do your best to hide the source of your strength from the world? Quick build. You can make a Hemoturge quickly by following these suggestions. First, put your highest ability score in Constitution, followed by Dexterity or Strength. Second, choose the Hermit background. Class features. As a Hemoturge, you gain the following class features. Your hit die is a d6. You get proficiency in light armor and simple weapons, no tools. You get Constitution and Strength saving throws, and then for your skills, you get to choose 2 from Acrobatics, Athletics, Medicine, Intimidation, Persuasion, or Survival. For starting equipment, you get your choice of leather armor, scale mail if you're proficient, or chain mail if you're proficient. Your choice of a light crossbow and 20 bolts, or any simple melee weapon, or any martial melee weapon if proficient. Your choice of a scholar's pack or an explorer's pack, and then your choice of a component pouch, an arcane focus, or a shield if proficient. If you forgo this equipment, you instead start with 5d4 times 10 gold pieces.
Let's pause there because that is a lot to go over first.
Yeah.
So obviously that was mostly all the flavor stuff, but we did break down specifically the basis of the class, which is the hit dice, the saving throws, the skills, the kind of expected equipment, which kind of informs what a build could look like, and of course we had the little quick build box there. Now I did a lot of notes on this yesterday. This part I didn't take a lot of notes on because it's a pretty standard part of every class. Did you have any initial thoughts on this though, Justin, by chance?
No. Though I was thinking about it a bit, especially that it's described about just like the saving throws for constitution and strength. And my thought process was, well, this is a power inside of you. Why wouldn't it be charisma? But strength definitely makes a lot more sense. And also it's perfectly fine balance wise.
I think there's an argument for charisma here. I was focusing on the Hemoturge as a physical class. I didn't
Yeah.
want the Hemoturge to be putting points into their mental stats because that made it feel more and more like a caster. I wanted this to feel like a physical class through and through, even if you choose the caster subclass option.
Well, to be fair, and it's hilarious because I was thinking about this as you said, like, yes, this came from my spite towards a redditor who said that you can't make a balanced casting class with con as their modifier. And to be fair, you didn't. You made a balanced subclass.
Yeah, I made a third caster with con as their modifier, which I'll admit has a lot more knobs that you can turn to make sure that it's not busted. One
I was gonna say on the point of making strength the second status into charisma, that is the first thing in this class, which immediately spells out to you what this class is meant to be. Because someone might see this and be like, "Oh, I'm like this magical bloodsmith," and it's like, well, you can be, but you're primarily someone who manipulates their own blood in a physical way. You're not a sorcerer. You're not just like a blood sorcerer. You're your own thing. You are meant to be manipulating the physical attributes of your own, as opposed to like delving into this magical source of your bloodline, which is something I want to touch base on specifically when we get in later in the class as well.
One thing that I want to draw attention to here is I had to say a lot in the starting equipment, if proficient, which is mainly because all of the subclasses give you different weapon and armor proficiencies. And so I took a page out of the cleric's book where the cleric offers you heavy armor for your starting equipment, but only if you're proficient in it. But for the Hemoturge, you, as a default for the class, only get light armor proficiency. Some of the subclasses offer medium or heavy or maybe shields, and so I have to say if proficient a lot here, which feels a little sloppy to me, but I don't really have a better way of doing that. So I just wanted to draw attention to that here as something that I'm aware of.
That is something that I'm going to touch base on later as well when it comes to the first level of this class.
The first level of this class is just so much, but like you said, we can talk about that later.
All right, we can move on from there.
All right, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the class features. Wellspring of Life. Your control over your blood and your flesh is represented by your blood points, which you can use in a variety of ways. Whenever a feature allows you to spend blood points, if no other maximum is specified, you can spend a number up to your proficiency bonus. Blood points. You have 3 blood points, and you gain more as you reach higher levels, as shown in the blood points column of the Hemoturge table. You can never have more blood points than shown on the table for your level. You regain all spent blood points when you finish a long rest. The blood die. Many Hemoturge features will refer to your blood die, or blood dice. At first level, your blood die is a d4, but its size will increase, as indicated in the blood die column of the Hemoturge table. Unnatural recovery. Fine control over blood and flesh gives you a preternatural ability to close and heal wounds. As a bonus action, you can touch a creature, spend blood points, and roll that many of your blood dice, causing the creature to regain a number of hit points equal to the roll plus your constitution modifier. Once you use this bonus action, you cannot do so again until you finish a short or long rest. Once you reach 10th level, you can use this feature twice between rests. And then we get the class table itself, which says a lot that I'm not going to read because everything that's on that table I'm going to read in paragraph form. Corporeal focus. Your training allows you to force your body into the proper forms to take advantage of a situation. On your turn, when you make a weapon attack roll that is not already adding your constitution modifier, or a strength or dexterity check, you can spend a blood point and roll a blood die, reducing your current hit points by an amount equal to the roll. This reduction cannot be prevented or lessened in any way. If you do so, you can add your Constitution modifier to the attack roll or ability check. Once you spend a blood point in this way, you cannot do so again until you finish a short or long rest. Hemoturgical Bloodline. Choose a Hemoturgical Bloodline, which determines the primary focus of your powers. The Blood Mage, focusing on blood-fueled spellcasting, the Chirurgeon, focusing on defensive healing, the Juggernaut, focusing on physical endurance, or the Scarlet Knight, focusing on violent retribution. Your bloodline grants you features when you choose it at 1st level, and again at 5th, 11th, 15th, and 20th level. And that's everything you get at level 1. Sanguine Augmentations. Your mastery of your blood and your body have given you access to certain sanguine augmentations, specific uses of your blood's energy that aid you beyond your normal abilities. At 2nd level, you gain 2 sanguine augmentations of your choice. Your options are detailed at the end of the class description. When you gain certain Hemoturge levels, you gain additional augmentations of your choice, as shown in the Augments Known columns of the Hemoturge table. Additionally, when you gain a level in this class, you can choose one of the augmentations you know and replace it with another augmentation that you could learn at that level. Vascular Overload. Beginning at 3rd level, you can force your body into action, overcoming its normal limits for a moment. You can spend a blood point to take a bonus action on each of your turns. This bonus action can only be used to take the dash, dodge, or help actions. Reknit. Starting at 6th level, you recover from minor wounds with unnatural speed. At the end of any short rest during which you regained hit points by spending hit dice, you can roll your blood die and restore an amount of additional hit points equal to the roll plus your Constitution modifier. Stalwart. At 7th level, your uncanny resilience allows you to withstand certain area effects, such as a green dragon's poison breath or a cone of cold spell. When you are subjected to an effect that allows you to make a Constitution saving throw to take only half damage, you instead take no damage if you succeed on the saving throw, and only half damage if you fail. Reflexive Defense. Beginning at 9th level, your blood can act in your defense in dire situations. When you fail a Strength, Dexterity, or Constitution saving throw, you can use your reaction to spend a blood point and roll a blood die. Add the number rolled to your saving throw. If this causes you to succeed the saving throw, reduce your current hit points by an amount equal to the number rolled, and this reduction cannot be prevented or lessened in any way. Like clockwork. At 13th level, the mechanisms of your body can shrug off a wide array of effects. You have advantage on saving throws against effects that would cause you to become paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, or stunned. In addition, your body no longer ages as normal, and you require only half as much food and drink to survive. Vital Force. Beginning at 14th level, you have the ability to shrug off certain attacks and effects while at peak condition. As long as you are not missing any hit points, or have temporary hit points, you gain a +1 bonus to your AC and saving throws. Furthermore, your body excels at healing, even and especially when pushed to its limits. When you use your Vascular Overload feature, roll your blood die and gain that many temporary hit points. Masterful Recuperation. At 17th level, you have become the master of your own body and can will your own recovery from certain conditions. As an action, you can spend 4 blood points to cast Greater Restoration targeting yourself, with no material components. Once you cast it in this way, you cannot do so again until you finish a long rest. Accelerated Rejuvenation. Starting at 18th level, you regain a number of blood points equal to your Constitution modifier when you finish a short rest. And that's the base class.
All right. So I wanted to approach this feature by feature starting at 1st level.
Sure.
I think that's the cleanest way for us to try and format our discussion on this.
Yeah,
go ahead and
that makes
scroll
sense.
back up to Wellspring of Life here.
Which is kind of 3 different features, but I took a page out of the Sorcerer's book here, because the Sorcerer also gets multiple features at once with their, what's it called? Font of Magic ability, which includes sorcery points and meta magic and the conversion ability. So I gave this a heading that contains multiple features.
My original thought would be key points. Key points is a similar thing.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that's probably the most analogous thing to this class is the monk, 100%. The monk is the closest one-to-one comparable class to this one.
Right, you've got the increasing die, you've got the increasing pool of points to spend. There's definitely inspiration from the sorcerer and the warlock, but the monk is the most direct comparison.
Yeah.
So talking about Wellspring of Life right off the bat, The biggest thing about this class is its blood points. Almost everything that you do in this class is fueled by your blood points, whether that be all your class features, which you just listed. There's also some subclass features and the augmentations. A lot of those have to use your blood points to do. So they are this class's key points in so many different ways. My biggest gripe with the blood points is how little you get. Because they only come back at a long rest like sorcery points, but sorcery points you can convert spell slots. You can get sorcery points or spell slots. In a monk, is their key points back on a short rest, and those key points are strong, right? You could do a lot of very powerful things for very few key points. And I will say this: playing the Juggernaut, especially the Juggernaut, which I felt didn't have. And we'll get into subclasses later, but I felt like the Juggernaut is probably the class or subclass in this that has the least ability to affect its surroundings.
Mhm.
It's a very internal subclass, and that's something we'll get into later as well with some of these class features. And this is something that obviously I've brought to Adam a couple times.
Yeah.
And I think the blood points, their biggest use, just like key points to flurry of blows, is going to be vascular overload.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That is absolutely the bread and butter of this class, and you reflect that well in a couple of your class features here. In that, if you do vascular overload, you get to do some extra stuff, and there's more of that later on too. It just feels like there isn't enough of them, and I could tell it you feel the same way because you decided to start the class off with 3 of them, and then slow it down later to match class level, which is kind of this unnatural progression.
Yeah.
And I know there's another reason why you did that. And it harkens back to the reason why you made this class. One of these is a spellcaster that uses blood points in a way that if you got your blood points back on a short rest, could fuck things up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll get more into that later when we actually start discussing the subclasses and stuff. But that is my initial reaction, even without even considering the spellcaster. I think that you're limited too much with how infrequently you get these back.
Do you think so? Do you think that it would be a mitigating factor if I just increased the number of blood points at a few places in the progression? Like, what if you capped out at 30 at level 20, and so you just get an extra blood point at a couple of key levels? Do you think that would solve the problem enough, or do you think it needs to be a recover on short rest resource? Maybe a lower cap that you recover more often?
I think that there is a solution here that way. I think it would be less elegant than making it short rest. And I think that making it short rest, there is a way to tweak the third caster such that it still makes sense even on a short rest.
Okay.
And again, we'll get into more detail when we actually discussing the subclasses and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and actually, the third caster is the first subclass on the docket, so it's good that we're talking about this now.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put that up. That is my flag when it comes to the blood points. I think the blood points are a great resource, just like key points, and I just think the class could go with a few more of them, and then we'll get into more of that later. What'd you think,
Well,
Justin?
and actually,
oh,
I was just going to say that based on the couple of times that I've play tested this class, I agree with you. It feels like you burn through your blood points too quickly and without doing enough with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, DMing a couple one shots based off of the blood points. There were some instances where it was like you're using your blood points just whenever you could. You were kind of looking for any reason to be able to use it, and sometimes it looked like you were just like, I guess I'll use it here just so that way you could use it. I think that there are potentially more uses for blood points as well, but also I think
something
that
else to get into later.
yeah. But also, I think that there are. I also agree with Shawn that you want to like you want to as much as we make fun of you for it, you want to be able to like manage your resources better. And
I am very bad at resource management for anyone who doesn't play D&D with us who's watching this stream. I play a warlock in our main campaign, and I almost never have spell slots. Almost never.
But so it feels like
I clarify on that as well. We use a spell point variant, which allows you to cast way more spells as a warlock, and he still manages to do it.
Yeah.
but so it feels like with this class, it's like it feels like something for where you either are going to be way too like restrictive on using your blood points, because you're just like I only have a limited amount that I can use per day. I don't know how, like, is this a situation for where I should take the dodge action as a bonus action, like, or you're the other end of that for where you just don't even realize you've burned through all of your blood points. It feels like there's not really a good in between, especially with the few one shots that I've DM'd with you guys. And also, this was something that I didn't realize with your unnatural recovery. I didn't realize you could heal other people with it. I don't think that
actually the last time I played this you couldn't. I changed that like last week. So
Okay.
that's a new thing. Making it more like lay on hands is a new thing.
I was going to say that I like that. I like that idea.
And that change was based on some feedback that I'd gotten from Shawn multiple times, because we've discussed this class a lot. This is kind of my baby, in that Shawn felt like the class didn't have enough ways to interact with other people, whether that's your enemies or your allies. He felt like it didn't have enough ways to do things that were outside of just affecting yourself. And so I tweaked Unnatural Recovery so that you could target other creatures with it, because I felt like that's a feature that you get at level 1, and so that gave you something else that you could have as a backup, like, oh, I need to be able to help my allies out, and so instead of just taking the help action with Vascular Overload, now you can heal them for a bit, potentially a lot. If you're using this in tier 4, you're rolling as much as like 6d12 healing on this, like that is potentially a lot of healing.
Yeah, and I was also another thing too, and I want to double check and make sure that this with the way that this scales. Oh wait, what level was it that you got? Level 6. Never mind. I will get to that
for Renet.
Yeah, I'll get to that when we get through there.
I agree. I think Unnatural Recovery is good. I when I first read through this yesterday, I did not see the part where you could heal other people, so I was like, it's like a weaker Second Wind, or like maybe a comparable one because you could spend more blood points. But then it's a resource cost versus Second Wind just being a thing.
Yeah.
But seeing that you could do it to other people, the restriction to the rests, what I wrote was weaker version of Second Wind. This shit was edited as I was working on this. Now it's much better than Second Wind. So, I think at the end I said, where's it at? Oh, all of these notes are relevant now. But there's two of the things on this I want to discuss. Blood die. Obviously, I think using the dice, I love putting dice as a class thing. I think rolling more dice is more fun. I will say, again, with this being most directly analogous to the monk, the progression of the dice is strange. It's not tier based. It's based not even necessarily on your proficiency modifier, because like you can multi-class.
True, yes. But assuming that you're single classed, it does scale at the levels your proficiency bonus scales.
Which I personally find kind of awkward. I think this could definitely. I think it could probably do. I see. The thing is that a D6 might be too high. At first, because you're killing yourself. But then a D12 or a D10 might be too low at high levels. But that will lead into a point that I have where I do think that one of these two features, Wellspring of Life or Bloodline, needs to come at a later level.
And this is a discussion that we've had before, in that I don't think that there's a way to do that without rebuilding everything from the ground up. But we can discuss that in more detail later.
We'll discuss that later. But the other feature which we shouldn't overlook is Corporeal Focus. I think it's worded a little bit odd. I think that this class could do with a name for roll your dice, take that damage, because otherwise it's 3 sentences every time you mention it.
The reason I didn't like keyword it is that in a few places I need it to be done slightly differently. So like I'm sure you noticed that reflexive defense, you only take the damage if you succeed on the saving throw with that
Yeah.
bonus. And then like there's places in the subclasses where like you roll dice and then you can take an amount of damage up to a certain number. So like I thought about keywording it, but I needed to have enough flexibility with it that I couldn't come up with a clean way to keyword it without making it unnecessarily complicated in some other subclasses.
I think a good way of doing it is to have the keyword only refer to the part where you reduce your HP by the number rolled. Because at that point, if you mention your blood dice, you can just say when it's relevant, you X. I would,
for example.
yeah, Bray, or Bloodline or something. And I think that could fit. That's something we could probably play around with while we're formatting this between the weeks. If we wanted to. But I like the effect. I like being able to use your Constitution modifier as part of the attack roll, not the damage roll, which is something that I misread when I first went through it yesterday, or an ability check. I think those are the two most appropriate spots to be able to do this, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I do think you probably do not need the rest restriction. I think the fact that it costs your blood points is your rest restriction, right?
Yeah, that's actually something that I was running into with a lot of these abilities. Like I would give something a blood point cost and a rest restriction, and I'm like, I'm not really sure that they need both because you're kind of already limited in terms of how often you can do it just by the fact that it costs blood points. Although if we change blood points to come back on a short rest, that might change things. So
The other thought I had on this though was it gets worse as you get stronger.
right, because you're taking more damage on average, like at level 17. But the thing is, your blood die increases slowly enough that it's not worse as a percentage of your maximum HP. It's worse in terms of the absolute damage you're taking, but you have gained enough HP by the time your die increases in size. Like the average damage taken from the, let's call it the bloodletting mechanic, only increases by 1 point every 4 levels.
Yeah.
And you're gaining way more HP than that, especially as a class that is mainly focused on your constitution.
I just think there shouldn't be a point in your class where you think, man, I wish my blood dice were smaller.
That's fair. I think that's a reasonable criticism of the central theme, but as I said with like trying to split up Wellspring and the Bloodline, I'm not sure there's a way to fix that without building this back up from scratch.
I think there's an easy way to fix it for this feature. Don't add your con, just add the die roll.
Okay, but if we're going to do that, would you be all right with removing the restriction that it's a roll that's not already using your Constitution modifier?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Any weapon attack or any strength or dex based ability check, I think is perfectly fine.
Right, because there's very few con checks. So a weapon attack or a strength or dex check. Sure. I think that'd be a reasonable change to this. And then you just add the die roll instead of your Constitution modifier. Okay, yeah. I think that's perfectly reasonable. And that covers Wellspring of Life. The Bloodline and the Augmentations we haven't revealed any of yet, so do you have anything to say about those as ideas, or...
Well, just like I had something to say about the corporeal focus for a moment there.
I was gonna say too, because it says not adding your Constitution modifier, but realistically, like, when is something going to really add your Constitution modifier?
There are abilities later on in the class that might let you do that.
All right.
Also, the Dampier from Van Richten's can use their con mod for their bite attack.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
I changed the wording on this after they released the Dampier UA because it was the first time there was an attack that keyed off con, and so I was like, oh, I don't want you to be able to double count your con mod.
Yeah, but I think using the blood dice circumvents that by itself.
Yeah,
and allows it to scale automatically.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. That does make it a little bit weaker at lower levels, but it makes it stronger at higher levels. So
Yeah.
And Sean, I do have a point too, because you're saying like, man, there doesn't want to feel like at a point in the class for where you just say, I wish that my blood die was smaller. I think because with the blood die, it does have this give and take to it. There are
Mhm.
abilities that are better because you have a higher blood die, and then there are ones that it sucks because you are taking damage because your blood die is higher. But I think the give and take, I think with that we are getting a lot more than
then you're
than
giving.
we are we are giving more than is being taken from us.
Sure.
I think as long as that is the general theme, if there's an ability that takes a little bit more,
Well, and
especially
I think I like Sean's idea that anytime you have the variable damage, you should probably also have a variable effect to match. So that it's like, well, I
yeah,
took more damage, but I got a bigger effect out of it.
yeah,
Yeah, you don't want to, because your con modifier in most situations is going to max it at 5. By the time you're level 17, it will be on average costing you more HP than what you're dealing every time you use this effect. Or my bad,
Yeah.
not that what you're dealing, but like then the benefit you get to the attack roll. That's not
Right.
even to mention as well, like in a lot of situations, getting a plus 11 to your attack rolls, like it's great if you roll really badly, but the vast majority of rolls, you're not going to need that big of a buff to change your miss into a hit.
Yeah.
Ability checks
Well,
might be
and
different.
but if you do need that big of a buff, it will feel so great to be like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm pretty sure I missed this hugely. Like, oh, I've got like a 6 on the die roll. Let's go for corporeal focus. Like maybe I
Yeah.
can bump this up by like 12.
And
yeah,
that'll feel better when you take the 12 damage to get the plus 12 effect versus you take 12 damage to get a plus 5 effect.
Sure, yeah, no, I think I agree with you on that. And honestly, since I already have reflexive defense doing that same thing of you add the die roll and not a con mod, I'm honestly not sure why corporeal focus didn't do that in the first place.
Probably just your design, your mind of design, your mind space for design. I kept on trying to say design space was probably different when you're making your tinkers to each of these effects.
That's fair, because corporeal focus was something that I added much later to the class. That wasn't
Yeah,
in my like
that
first
was definitely
draft
not
of
in the
it.
first draft. Yeah. But you asked about what we might say about Hemoturge Bloodline and Sanguine Augmentations. Obviously, there needs to be a subclass. Bloodline is, the obvious take.
Yeah.
Sanguine Augmentations, I love the Warlock's invocations. More classes that have like this kind of modular, like personal build situation going on, I'm gonna support. So I think the idea of giving another class one of these I think it's a given. Honestly, I think it really should be something that's explored more. It obviously makes it harder because you have to make up a bunch of different mildly or vaguely comparable abilities to be able to do it, but it's
Well,
I think it's still the most fun class to play or type of class to play.
and designing an ability like that necessarily adds a lot more crunch to the class, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. I've complained in the past about the level of crunch in Pathfinder, but I want to clarify my problem with Pathfinder's crunch isn't the options away from the table, it's how much math I need to do at the table.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind crunch in terms of, oh, there's 20 classes, each of them has 8 subclasses, each of those subclasses has choices you have to make. Like, I don't mind that
Yeah.
kind of crunch. I like having a ton of options when I am not at the table. The crunch that I mind is sitting at the table, trying to figure out how many attacks do I make? What are my attack bonuses for each of them? Let me add these 3 different numbers on the fly for each die roll. Like, that's the kind of crunch I mind. I don't mind the sort of systemic crunch of there's just a lot going on, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is definitely the biggest problem with Pathfinder. I love being able to go through and look at those feats, though they have an issue of not being comparable in power most of the time to each other.
Yeah.
But going through all those feats and like really picking out specifically what your character is going to be built as. But then we're sitting at the table and you have to account for all of those feats. Right. Because in this situation, I get the +2. Also large, so I get another +2 there, but I get a -1 to my AC. All of that, you have to literally. I play with an Excel sheet for Pathfinder.
So did I. When I played
yeah.
Pathfinder, I had multiple spreadsheets for one character.
Yeah,
I
wild.
don't play Pathfinder.
Yeah, good
But-
choice.
But in saying that, I do like the evocations that the warlocks get. I do like the augmentations that the Hemoturge get. I would like, a couple more classes that follow that sort of thing. I don't think I would like if every class followed that kind of model.
I
But
agree that could get overwhelming, but yeah, it's a really cool thing that I wish Wizards dipped a little bit more into.
yeah, I would
Yeah.
like this is something that is it's a very cool idea. It gives you a lot more customization in terms of, what your idea of this class or even the character you're playing as is.
Yeah,
Everyone jokes about how warlocks, you have to take Eldritch Blast and you have to get all of those different evocations around it, but you really don't have to. You can get other evocations for it. And I mean,
well, and it means that every warlock feels different. Like, even if
Yeah.
you do take Eldritch Blast, Agonizing Blast, Repelling Blast, like, you're probably going to pick a different invocation for your fourth one. Like, there are other good options to take. And so every warlock ends up feeling distinct because it's like, oh, even if we took the same subclass and the same pact and are the same, like, race and choose similar spells, like, the invocations make your character play differently, or at the very least feel different at the table. Like, on my warlock, I took very early Eyes of the Runekeeper, which lets you read all languages, which is not a vastly powerful invocation, but it felt really key to how I played my character and the sort of situations I wanted to put him in. So, like, I think that the augmentations here and the invocations for the warlock give you the opportunity to do that, to read through that list and say, oh, I like the implication that has for my character, or like, oh, my character image fits perfectly with X, Y, and Z, you know?
Yeah, I will defend a little bit when people say that all warlocks feel the same because of that. And I think part of that's because a lot of tables don't go beyond like 5th level. So it's like the first two I'm going to take are going to be Agonizing Blast and probably Repelling Blast. If you're building for optimization, obviously. But if you're just building for the general warlock, you're probably just going to take Agonizing Blast. Because that one does feel like a need.
Yeah.
But I would say you could definitely go without Repelling Blast. Now, I've never taken Repelling Blast. I've always liked taking like Mask of Many Faces or what's the Silent Image one? The Mist of something Mist. I don't know. The one where you can cast Silent Image without any material components or whatever.
Yeah.
Those ones are the ones that really stick out to me. But yeah, the Warlock definitely feels like a freak accident. But let's get back here to the Hemoturge specifically. Let's move on because we've already mentioned that we like the augmentations. One thing that I will say about the augmentations is the progression. You get less of these than the Warlock gets of their invocations.
The biggest reason for that is just that I've had so much trouble coming up with them, and so like for the playtest, I don't want to be playtesting a Hemoturge where I get more augmentations than exist. So, like, I've got them pretty sparse right now. I'd like for those numbers to go up, probably to about what the Warlock gets, because I feel like the augmentations are of similar power level to the Warlock invocations.
For sure.
I just have had tons of trouble coming up with these, so there's just not a ton to choose from at the end of the class description.
Yeah.
The Vascular Overload, how do you feel about that?
Vascular Overload, I think, is perfect. I think it's a fantastic bread and butter ability for this class. It fits with what this class do, and it tells you exactly what this class should play like. Because if you look at Uncanny Dodge, for instance, Uncanny Dodge lets you disengage and hide. Okay, so it's a rogue. I want to get in and out and hide. With this class, you got dodge, dash, and help. Okay, so I should be running in, getting up close, and helping my allies more than this. This is a martial class that is far more focused on kind of a support place. And obviously subclasses change that in some way, but I think it's vastly support. The majority of the subclasses for this class are support. We'll get into that later. But it's supposed to be support up there with everybody, kind of tanking things or take things away. There is a criticism I have about that later on that I'll get into. But I think that this class, this ability does its job perfectly of telling you what this class is maybe supposed to play like, and it has 3 very useful bonus actions. I do think the wording, obviously, you copy and pasted straight from Cunning Action. I think that wording on Cunning Action is archaic at this point. You can spend a blood point to take a bonus action on each of your turns. You could probably just say you can spend a blood point as a bonus action and take one of these actions. Just because that was in like the relics of 5e where it was like not everybody has a bonus action. Ooh, the rogue has this special thing.
Right.
Bonus actions are pretty much universal now at this point with all of the supplements.
So one reason why I kept the spend a blood point to take a bonus action language is because there are different subclasses get additional ways to use the vascular overload, and I felt that it made the most sense with the language if vascular overload still said spend a blood point to take a bonus action, and these are the things that you can do with it, because then the subclasses just get to add to that list. They add like a single item to that list, you know?
Right. But what you can write is you as a bonus action, you can spend a blood point to use vascular overload, and then vascular overload does these things. This way, one of the reasons I say that is because with the rogue, they don't have a
resource that they're spending.
They don't have a resource they're spending. So when you say you could spend a blood point to take a bonus action on each of your turns, it could be confusing to newer players to be like, so I spend this and then I can then take a bonus action on each of my turns, right? Like, no. You spend this on each of your turns to take the bonus action.
Right, sure. Okay, that I get what you're saying, yeah.
Which is why I think it's fine enough on the rogue. It's still archaic language, I think. But I think here it could slip up some newer players. And since I'm in another campaign with newer players now, I have seen them trip on these kind of weird wording plays where to me it's so obvious that that's not what that means.
Right.
It's hard to get back in that
so
mind
ingrained
space.
in the system. Yeah.
It's hard to get back in that mind space as someone who hasn't played this before.
Do you think it'd be easier if it said you may spend a blood point?
Absolutely
no,
not.
shut the fuck up.
That's something that I have had trouble with in the past. Viewers at home, I like to use the word may because I come from Magic the Gathering, where when you can do something, it doesn't say can, it says you may, because you either do it or you don't. You get to choose, and so they use the word may. But D&D does not use the word may ever anywhere. They say can. And so Shawn has to watch very carefully when I make homebrew to see if I use the word may in it, because I have a habit of doing that, because I don't like Wizards of the Coast style guide.
What are your thoughts on vascular overload, Justin? Do you have anything extra to add?
No, I love it, and kind of similar to your idea from how this comes from the rogue's cunning action, but also this does come you also can take this
Step
a
of the
little
wind.
bit. Yeah. Step of the wind, patient
Flurry
defense.
blows, patient defense, yeah.
Yeah, where you
that's
can,
the thing. It feels sort of like the redheaded stepchild of the rogue and the monk.
It does. But I think that's useful because as we've stated, or as you read even, using specifically vascular overload to take these bonus actions means something. So it's important to make that, just like with the monk using flurry of blows, it's important to put them all in the same label.
Yeah, right, precisely. Yeah.
And I will say this ability in particular was definitely something that you were using over and over and over again in a couple of the one shots that I DM, because
I'm pretty sure every one shot I've played, I've used vascular overload every turn of every combat.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Because
which is part of the reason the blood points might be a little too low.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you if you have no, if you're not worried about like, oh no, I can only dash like a few, I can dash to get in, but I don't know how many times I should like dodge as a bonus action in order to like kind of be more of a frontline martial support. That's when it's just like, I guess I can dodge 2 times, that way I have 4 more blood points to spend for the rest of the day. So it's things like that, and I love it. As a higher level Hemoturge, I would want to be making sure I can spam this every single turn. Just like as a high level monk, you want to make sure you're spamming, stunning strike every turn, flurry of blows every turn. It's like something like that.
Yeah.
that is how this ability feels.
Yeah, for sure. I think 3rd level is also a pretty decent level for it. But yeah, I think we could probably go on to Reknit now, which I keep on pronouncing as Reknit.
Wreck it.
So this ability, pretty weak.
It is pretty weak. Honestly,
Um,
I gate. So Reknit is pretty weak, but I didn't want this to be like a really, really strong ability. Like, to be perfectly frank, I think that everything the Hemoturge gets before the level 6 is really strong. Like, the Hemoturge gets a lot of strong abilities, and so I was fine giving it an ability that's not quite a ribbon. Like, it's still useful, especially since it costs you nothing. Like, you don't have to spend a blood point to do this. This is just a bonus that you get. I was fine giving them a kind of weak, little bit ribbony ability. And for one of the subclasses, this ability gets better.
it does. Well, it gets better, yes, but does it get good? That's something we
Probably
can
not.
discuss.
I
Go on, Justin.
I was checking too before because I wanted to, I was just seeing how it scales in comparison to Song of Rest, and it actually scales with Song of Rest.
It does. The thing is that this is an individual Song of Rest. Song of Rest is a ribbon ability. It is like definitively a ribbon ability. But it also gets. I think the bard gets something else at 6. I think expertise maybe. No, that's the rogue. This is at 6th. I think the bard gets it at 3rd and 10th.
They get this at 2nd level. Bards get Song of Rest at 2nd level.
Oh, right. I was thinking of Counter Charm is 6th level,
Yeah.
which is another ribbon ability.
Counter Charm is worse than a ribbon. I've never seen anyone use Counter Charm.
They get a subclass feature at level 6.
They get a subclass feature at 6. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But what I will say on this is where the cracks for interacting with the world start to show for me. I think that this 6th level spot is a great opportunity to give them a different ability, which does allow them to directly interact with the world in some capacity, because they already have a fantastic healing ability already. Through what was it called? Unnatural recovery.
Yeah.
And it's important for this class to get healing. It is, because a lot of its effects hurt it. So it's important that it has some healing. But I think the fact that unnatural recovery comes back in a short rest, and as I said before, I think that blood point should also come back in a short rest. We'll get into that further. I think there's room for a different ability here that's maybe a bit more impactful and specifically interacts with the world, because the next billion abilities for this base class feature do nothing for anyone else but yourself. Vascular Overload is the last feature here that interacts with the world. The rest of these abilities are you and you alone.
Yeah, that's true.
And Reknit is the one that starts that thing. And it might be appropriate to put something here that is self-contained, and then put something in later to break up the monotony. Because I think that's gonna be the one of the glaring things I'm gonna hit on, is the fact that they're all like this.
So if we change blood points to come back on short rest, that makes accelerated rejuvenation completely obsolete. So we could totally just shuffle around the rest of the base class features to just remove accelerated rejuvenation, add something a little bit more interactive that you get at whatever level we determine is the empty level.
Yeah. That was something, and I'll just jump straight to it because we're talking about the short rest and we're talking about the use of key points. Accelerated rejuvenation is extremely underwhelming for an 18th level ability.
Yeah.
Just
it's just as underwhelming as the the sorcerer capstone.
It is. It is. That's true.
That's not an excuse. The sorcerer capstone is an abomination that they never created. No, I am frankly ashamed of accelerated rejuvenation. It made more sense when I thought that the blood points were a lot more powerful and plentiful than they are. Accelerated rejuvenation made a lot of sense on paper before I had ever played the class. And to be fair, I've never played an 18th level Hemoturge. I've never played a Hemoturge in a campaign. But
you played an 18th level Hemoturge once?
Oh no, he was a 17th level Hemoturge with 2 levels in fighter.
Oh,
Because
well,
I wanted Action Surge desperately, I think.
well,
When were you
and
guys
I
level
have
19?
The one shot he ran where we played with Alex and Sarah,
We were 19 for that?
or were we 18?
you
I
might
think
have
I might
been.
have. I think I might have been a level 16 Hemoturge with 2 levels in fighter.
I
You
don't
guys
remember
were
being such a high level character.
you guys were absolutely high level characters.
What did I
Uh,
play?
I have no idea what you played.
Because I was in
I,
that.
You were.
the Ranger?
Was I the Ranger? Why would I do that to myself?
But anyway,
No, you were Magus.
Was I a Magus?
Yeah, you were your little goblin. Remember?
How's a Goblin Magus?
But
I don't
but
remember
any,
this. Anyway,
but anyways, Accelerated Rejuvenation looked good on paper before I had played the class, but after playing the class in a few one-shots, I think that Accelerated Rejuvenation is really weak, and that I kind of agree with you. The class either needs a lot more blood points or it needs to get them back faster.
So
yeah.
I will say that if we are looking towards how they get their blood points back on a short rest, we can also kind of look and lean towards the bard for, pardon the analogy, inspiration, because
Ha
they don't get those inspirations back until except for a long rest until level 5. That's when they get their stuff back on a short rest.
The problem with the bard, using the bard's comparison though, is the bard has a static number of inspiration points versus the monk, which scales. The reason the monk scales and gets back in a short rest is because they need it to be useful at lower levels too. Bardic Inspiration is still good with long rest recharges at lower levels. At higher levels, you need that short rest. But for the monk and Hemoturge in turn, only having a handful of blood points at low levels, you go through those just as quickly as you will at high levels. And it's just not enough.
That's fair. But I also do agree that Accelerated Rejuvenation is an abomination.
So if we cut Accelerated Rejuvenation, what do we think about
I will say before we start rearranging stuff, Stalwart 7th level perfect ability. We don't need to talk about that. It's literally just Constitution evasion and it's perfect. We don't need to.
Yep,
nothing has to change about Stalwart. It's a perfect level. It matches evasion for the monk and the rogue. I think that's exactly where it needs to be and what it needs to be.
How do you like the name? Because to be perfectly frank, the name was the only part of this ability that took any thought at all. Literally the first. So decision number 1, make this class out of spite. Decision number 2, the class has evasion but for Constitution. And then the only thing I had to decide was what to name it. And Stalwart was what I came up with.
I mean, it's good.
It's good. I like the idea is that you're essentially withstanding. I mean, it's better than like resolution or resolve, sorry, or like something like that. I like Stalwart.
So this was a word that I didn't think of at the time, and I have since used it for an item on this podcast. But what about bulwark instead of stalwart?
I thought about
that's any better.
I thought it, but I think I really like Stalwart better than Bulwark, because to me, Bulwark just feels kind of like it's supposed to be just kind of large.
Well, and Bulwark feels to me like you're protecting somebody else.
Yeah, that too. What I will say, and this is the fact, because it's such a blood heavy, there's a lot of blood related names in this. I think Stalwart fits that flavor better than Bulwark.
Yeah,
Stalwart definitely gives me Victorian vibes, which is the vibe I get from this class generally. When it comes to like manipulating blood and disease and like physical constitution, I think Victorian era.
Oh man,
that's kind of what this.
Now I'm thinking of like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde Hemoturge.
Yeah, like that. Yep, that's kind of like that's a fantastic idea. That's actually someone should make that subclass. Because that fits perfectly. Like use some key points to get like a rage type thing.
Right. Yeah.
Or not key points. Sorry, blood points.
They're basically key points.
So Stalwart's perfect. It's really the rest of these. And this is something very specific as well. I think that one of these, reflexive defense like Clockwork and Vital Force, one of those needs to just go. They are all saving throw buffs. Every single one of them are saving throw buffs, which I think is a little too much. Like, I don't think it's overpowered. I just think it's like, it feels like I'm just getting the same things.
I'd totally be willing to ditch like Clockwork, except I love the name so much. My favorite part of like Clockwork is the name.
So here's my idea for that. Move it to a high level augmentation.
Okay. Keep the name, keep the effect even, just make it an augmentation that's locked behind a decently high level. I think that's totally fine, but at this point we are removing 2 abilities from the base class, and I know we want to add more interactive stuff, but we do need to come up with what exactly that is.
We will. We can do that off stream. Like, as for anybody who doesn't know, and I'll be saying this in the stream, we're not streaming next week because that actually is Adam's birthday. And incidentally, he'll have the week off next week, so I'm sure he'll have some time to think about some stuff here. But I think that's going to be our homework for this.
Workshopping this class.
Workshopping this class, really getting to a place where we all feel super comfortable posting it. And most importantly, I think keeping it close to the vision that Adam had, because I don't want to completely just, destroy the class and rebuild it. Like, I want to keep the cores here, like the fundamentals, and make sure that it feels the way that you want it to feel, while maintaining a fun and variant type effect. But before we start talking about ditching specific ones, I do want to go through my notes on each of these that I wrote.
All right.
To kind of tell you what my thoughts on each of them were. So reflective defense, I wrote doubling down on self-healing, because there's another kind of self-healing ability. The last class feature we got was about saving throws. This suffers from a lack of newness, I said. This is where the core class features start to feel like you have limited options to affect the world, only to withstand it. So that's really my biggest point on reflexive defense. I think that being able to do this for your physical saves it makes sense for the Hemoturge. I think this is the one that, like, most immediately I'm like, okay, I totally understand why this exists for a blood-based class. The other ones I don't have that same exact feeling.
Sure.
And then for like Clockwork, I wrote, this is another feature about saving throws, which the last 2 features were about as well. I said that the lack of aging is nice and flavorful, but the half as much food and drink feels a little tame for a 10th level character, which I definitely think. I think maybe you could even just do, like, you don't need to eat, but you still have to drink, to, like, turn the drink into blood or something. Like,
right, you still need to, like, drink water and breathe. You just don't need to eat. Well, yeah. I'm going to be honest. Like Clockwork was basically just supposed to be a ribbon. Like,
yeah, I do think the most obvious thing on this would be not having to sleep. That's like one of the most like Clockwork things I can think of. Like, you don't rest. You just do your thing always. Obviously, you still have to take a long rest. It doesn't really apply, but
well, and the reason I avoided that was that I was going more for, like, the mechanisms of your body are like Clockwork and cannot be interrupted. Not that you are unto a Clockwork machine, that, like, the processes of your body are so in tune with themselves that they are like, they can't be interrupted, and they don't require as much sustenance from the outside to keep themselves going.
Yes.
That was what I was thinking of when I came up with, like, Clockwork.
I was thinking of the term well-oiled machine, but I think that's the name of one of the features in this somewhere anyway.
One of the subclasses has the ability a well-oiled war machine.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, and sticking with your concept too, that, like, the feel of this is definitely more physical.
Well, and that's part of why Shawn's criticism is so apt, because, like, his criticism is that you don't interact with the world, you merely understand it. But the entire class concept is that you have near perfect control over your own body. And that, I'm not saying that can't interact with the world. I'm saying that lends itself to abilities that are defensive.
It does. But I will point out your flavor text up here, which says An elf in dark robes ducks behind cover, making a quick cut in his palm with the dagger in the other hand. The blood flows quicker than it should, pulling away from his hand and forming a dart in the air and launches. The very first flavor thing you have in here is an ability which interacts with the world. And that's a really cool image, which I don't think is actually like a thing for like it kind of is with the Scarlet Knight in one of the features. But it's not like it's a provoked thing as opposed to an invoked thing.
Yeah, that is one piece of flavor text that did not actually make it into being a feature. And every time I read that flavor text, I'm like, God damn it, that's not a feature. But it's so cool, I don't want to delete it.
It is cool. That could be an invocation we make, maybe, or an augmentation.
It's and then you can call them invocations.
And then my final note.
SRD.
My final note for Vital Force. The feature relies on being at max HP or temp HP. The addition of getting temp HP is nice, but it's also limited. The feature will not be in effect all that much, and it won't be. You either have to be at max, which is the vast majority of your time in combat. You're not at max HP, and especially with the way that this class is designed, you're supposed to be tanking. That's what vascular overload implies. That's what all of these withstanding effects implies, that you're supposed to be taking effects on. And this feature rewards you for not getting hit. And just makes the first one. My suggestion was actually maybe if you wanted to keep this, maybe you get the bonuses when you're below half HP.
Oh, so instead of rewarding you for staying up, rewarding you for getting down.
Or rewards you for taking hits, because that's what you're supposed to be doing.
But
yeah, my other note is like this is the fourth feature in a row which doesn't allow you to interact with the world, only to help you when the world interacts with you. Which
I do know that there is one of the subclass features that does. Yeah. So it's one of those things where.
Well, I will say we haven't gotten to subclasses yet. I will say that there is a mix of being above half, being below half. There's a lot of playing around with where your HP has to be for features to work. So that is something that exists.
Yeah. Honestly, if we want it to be based on where you're at HP wise, I'd be fine with it saying like when you're above half. I was worried that was too strong. That's why I limited it to only max or having temp HP. I gave you a way to easily proc temp HP, but I was worried that would be too strong, just saying +1 to AC and saving throws well above half HP.
I'm going to say that out of these like self-preservation effects, this one does the least for me.
Okay.
I think this is the one where it's like a +1 to AC and saving throws is nice when you have it. It's good for a magical item, but for a class feature, it doesn't feel like much to me as a player. I'm getting this effect, especially with any requirement, like it gets negated or something like that.
I think that the way this feature is worded makes it feel more like a trap than it's supposed to feel like. Because like, if I didn't have the text in there about ACs and saving throws at all, like it would be an underwhelming but alright feature that whenever you use your vascular overload, you gain some temp HP. Like, some amount of temp HP every turn, that seems like a fine ability to me. Maybe a little weak, but it seems like a fine ability on its own. The fact that I have tied the other bonus to being restricted means that even though you're still getting something good out of the ability, it feels like you're not getting as much as you could, and so it feels bad. It feels really weird to me that, like, the last sentence of this ability is where most of the power is, but because the first few sentences have a restriction in them, you feel like you're losing out on a lot of power.
I think that might be an apt way of describing it. I do think that the tipper HP is pretty decent, and I think having an effect that relies on you having tip HP tied with that is great. I just think that the effect that you get when you have the tip HP just isn't appealing enough. I think there might be something else there.
What if we remove the max HP possibility? Just you have to have temp HP to get this buff. And honestly, the buff I don't even think needs to be to AC and saving throws. Like, it could totally be a different kind of buff. This just felt this was an easy thing for me to come up with, you know? It
Yeah.
was easy to say, what if you just have a cloak of protection on when you're, like, especially healthy? Like,
Yeah.
I
I'd be
think
totally fine with a different set of buffs while you have temp HP.
you could.
Oh, holy shit. What if you get temp HP whenever you use Vascular Overload, and while you have temp HP, you can use Vascular Overload without spending a blood point?
Ooh.
It's not bad.
That
And-
that is interesting because it would be a feedback thing. It's like, okay, well now I want to use vascular overload to keep the tip HP so I can keep using vascular overload. But you're also
You also have to I think too to think about is how likely that temp HP is going to go away, because
pretty damn likely.
it's
Unless you're
pretty
playing
likely.
Unless you're playing the Blood Mage, you're supposed to be in combat pretty heavily. And even the Blood Mage has the ability to take a few hits. Like, the Blood Mage can totally be in there. So
Yeah.
you're probably losing that those temp HP.
so my idea is either we come up with something that this kind of maybe reckoning back to Shawn's idea of affecting the world around us. Or the other idea I had was when you are above half your max HP and have 10 hit points, you still get this effect.
I mean, if we just make this effect less restricted, it's
Yeah.
still a bland effect.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that.
I think I like the idea that while you have the tip HP, you get some sort of benefit. I would personally prefer that it be something that affects the world, but we are kind of planning already to replace probably 2 of these features with one that affects the world, so we don't need to go all affects the world. The monk certainly isn't that way. A lot of the monk features are selfish.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's something that we can shop over the next week and think about. I don't think we have to come to a solution right now, but I like that idea. I think the vascular overload thing is an interesting idea. I do think that just because of the way the class kind of encourages you to play, it may be a little ribbony to be an effect that has to wait until your next turn to happen. Because if it's the vascular overload thing, then you have to wait till your next turn to use vascular overload again, and you may have already lost your temporary hit points. It's very likely that you've lost your temporary hit points by that point. So you're not most of the time getting anything.
How about this? When you use your Vascular Overload feature, roll your blood die and gain that many temporary hit points. When you end your turn with temporary hit points, no, never mind. That's I'll keep thinking.
We'll think of something. But I think we're kind of on the same page. We might want to either shop or create different effects. Maybe for 2 of the effects between Renit, Reflexive Defense, Light Clockwork, and Vital Force. I think those 4, maybe could be replaced with something. Like 2 of them could probably be replaced with something else, and then maybe shopping the other 2.
I think Like Clockwork is the one of those that I am the least attached to, and like Justin said, that one could easily be moved into an augmentation. So I'm especially fine with cutting that feature if I can just move it to an augmentation. Accelerated Rejuvenation is probably getting cut if we make the change to Short Rest.
I think so.
That gives us space to add more interactive stuff without necessarily killing Renit. Although I'm not. The only reason I'm my biggest concern about cutting Renit is that there's a subclass that has an ability that keys off of it. But like you said, that's kind of a weak subclass ability anyways. So, but what do you guys think of Masterful Recuperation? That's the only one we haven't talked about yet.
I think it's too weak. I think it's too weak.
Okay.
So, for comparison, the level 18 monk ability is a much, much stronger greater invisibility, which grants you resistance to all damage but force while you're invisible. Doesn't knock you out of invisibility if you attack or cast a spell. And also allows you to cast Astral Projection with the 9th level spell for 8 key points. This allows you to cast once per long rest a 5th level spell with no material component, which I think is a little weak for the 17th level ability here. And the mass recuperation is better than accelerated rejuvenation, so it definitely comes off as the tier 4 ability between the 2 of them. Sure. My notes on it were you could probably You could let it target another creature besides yourself, I think.
Okay.
I think that wouldn't be too much. And really, that might be enough.
Yeah,
I
I
might
would-
even get rid of the rest restriction. I'm gonna be honest, because the monk
It is
doesn't
4
have it.
blood points.
It's 4 fucking blood points, and even with the short rest, key points roughly equal their key cost +1 in spell slots, even though they come back on a short rest. Because Ash Protection is not a full spell, you get it for 8th level. Now, to be fair, you can only cast it on yourself, so that is a restriction. But the Greater Invisibility is only 3 key points. Greater Invisibility is a 5th level spell, and you get resistance to all that damage while you're invisible.
Okay.
That's insane.
Okay. I was just concerned that giving you the ability to cast Greater Restoration on your allies enables stupid coffee lock bullshit.
It is. Grid Restoration is a really good spell.
Coffee
It
Lock?
That
is.
is. Coffee Lock
Coffee
is.
Lock is their sorcerer warlock multiclasses who don't ever take a long rest. What they do is take a bunch of short rests, turn their warlock spell slots into sorcerer points, turn those sorcerer points back into sorcerer spell slots, and you never lose them as long as you don't take a long rest, which they never do because they take the warlock invocation. That means they don't need to sleep, and so all they ever do is take short rests. They take a bunch of short rests every day.
Gotcha.
And turn spell slots into spell points into spell slots. Spell slots into spell points into spell slots. It's
Gotcha.
stupid and it shouldn't be allowed in the system, but rules as written it works. And being able to remove exhaustion opens up similar bullshit for other classes because they don't need to multi-class into warlock to no longer need to sleep.
To be fair to that point, though, this is tier 4.
Yeah, it's level 17. You could be casting Wish at this level. So like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
am I being stingy about Greater Restoration?
Yeah. I think obviously one of the scarier parts about Grid Restoration is that there are a lot of strong spell effects that can only be taken away with Grid Restoration, not just the effects that's lists, but often those also state Grid Restoration cast at a higher level.
Right, and you can't upcast this.
You can't upcast
Really?
this. There's at least one high level spell that requires like a 9th level Grid Restoration or something.
I can't. I'm not familiar with that, but I don't know the spell. I don't know the spell
I
list.
might be
very well,
making that
to be
up. I'm gonna be honest.
I was
It's
gonna
very
say,
possible.
that might be a thing from like Pathfinder or something where it requires a spell
could
cast
be.
at a certain level.
Yeah, because like
Um,
in my mind, the highest spell that I can think of for where it's set for like one of those like things in the spell restriction is Feeble Mind, and it just
That-
says
Yeah,
It's
that's just Greater Restoration. That can
yeah,
that can be at 5th level.
so
Yeah.
I don't think that's a thing in 5e.
You could restrict it to once per short rest. That would still be okay. It wouldn't let you spam it.
Yeah.
I might. What I might do is you could keep the restriction of long rest, but give them an additional thing that they get to do at this feature, just like the warlock gets the invisibility and ash protection. Maybe give them another like
I think
sustaining ability.
I think I'd be most happy with that. Like, I'm fine with removing the targeting restriction, but I'd like to keep the once per long rest thing, just because if you take away the once per long rest thing, then the Hemoturge never has to take a long rest again.
Yeah. Well, I think there are problems with not taking a long rest that don't involve sleep as well. I think that's something in Xanathars as well. I don't think it's just you can't if you don't sleep. I think there's also you have to take literally a long rest as well.
Yeah, you don't get spell slots back if you don't long rest. You don't get hit die back if you don't long rest.
Sure.
I think there's still like chances of you like getting exhausted and stuff if you don't take a long rest.
Greater restoration cures level of exhaustion.
That's true.
That's the thing that I was thinking of, is that Greater Restoration cures level of exhaustion, so you never need to sleep again.
That's true.
Whereas with it as is right now, you still have to sleep every other day.
Yeah. I think I'd also be more interested in giving them more options as well. So
Yeah.
I'm always more in favor of expanding the options as opposed to making the options more powerful to be more honest.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I say remove the targeting restriction and add like some other ability to this 17th level feature, and that's probably good.
You could also go the way of the Alchemist, the original Alchemist, which is a target can't benefit more than once per long rest. But that wouldn't really get rid of your problem of like getting it off of yourself per long rest.
Mhm.
I think I just prefer to do what you said. Give it no restriction on who you can target, and then just give them an additional option.
Sure, yeah, I think that's reasonable. And we have now spent over an hour on the base class.
We have, so we got a few subclasses. We got 4 subclasses, right?
Yeah, we got 4 subclasses.
Used to be 3 until like a couple weeks ago.
Like 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Yesterday, actually, I think. I'm gonna wait for Justin to start reading the Blood Mage. I'm guessing he had to go to the bathroom, and in his defense, we had been talking in this section for an hour and 10 minutes, so like he had no way of knowing we would suddenly run out of things to say.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go ahead and give another like pan through of all the effects, see if there was anything that I missed that I thought of. Once we know what the subclasses, I'll start talking about the first level. No. I think we pretty much touched on everything that I think really needs to be touched on. We didn't talk about reflexive defense all too much, to be honest.
You brought it up as an exemplar of the fact that the class just doesn't interact with the world very much.
Yeah.
But me and Justin didn't have much to say about it. Well, and that's the thing. I think a lot of these features that you're criticizing, I think they're fine in a vacuum. The problem is that they are all doing the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think all these are fine in a vacuum. I think they might even be fine. Some of them, like you said, with like Justin's with like clockwork as an augmentation, but having them all be mandatory things together makes it feel like I'm mandatorily being restricted in what I can do.
All right.
You can see the Blood Mage rearing its head on the right side of the page there.
Yeah, you get to see the spellcasting table. Hey, Justin's back. All right, so now that Justin's back, I'm going to start reading the Blood Mage.
All right.
Ugh.
Hemoturgical bloodlines. Different hemoturges follow different traditions and exert their power in different ways. Your bloodline confines you, but leads to still greater powers. The Blood Mage. Blood Mage hemoturges have chosen to use their fine control over their flesh and blood to fuel spellcasting, drawing arcane energy from their bodies with each and every spell. Spellcasting. When you choose this bloodline at first level, you gain the ability to cast spells. Cantrips. You learn 2 cantrips of your choice from the Sorcerer spell list. You learn another Sorcerer cantrip of your choice at 10th level. Spell slots. The Blood Mage spellcasting table shows how many spell slots you have to cast your spells of first level and higher. To cast one of these spells, you must expend a spell slot of the spell's level or higher. You regain all expended spell slots when you finish a long rest. Do we all know how spellcasting works? Can I skip to the part?
Yeah, you can skip most of this. But you should probably specify the part where you get certain spells.
Yeah, actually, as soon as I say, can I skip some of this, the next couple paragraphs are important. You know 2 first-level sorcerer spells of your choice, one of which must come from the Abjuration and Transmutation spells on the Sorcerer spell list. The spells known column of the Blood Mage spellcasting table shows you when you learn more sorcerer spells of first level or higher. Each of these spells must be an Abjuration or Transmutation spell of your choice and must be of a level for which you have spell slots. The spells you learn at 8th, 14th, and 20th level can come from any school of magic. When you gain a level in this class, you can replace one of the sorcerer spells you know with another spell of your choice from the sorcerer spell list. The new spell must be of a level for which you have spell slots, and it must be an Abjuration or Transmutation spell, unless you're replacing the spells you learned at 1st, 8th, or 14th, or 20th level from any school of magic. Spellcasting ability. It's Constitution. Spellcasting focus. You can use an arcane focus or a spellcasting focus as a spellcasting focus for your sorcerer spells. And now a feature. Grisly Arcana. Beginning at first level, you can trade some of your life force to recuperate arcane energy. As an action, spend blood points and roll that many of your blood dice. You can choose to reduce your current hit points by an amount up to the total rolled on the dice plus your Constitution modifier to create spell slots according to the table below. This reduction cannot be prevented or lessened in any way. The table below, it's 5 times the spell slot level. That's what the table is. For example, if you are a 2nd level blood mage with a 16 constitution, you could spend 2 blood points to roll 2d4 plus 3. You could then choose to reduce your current hit points by 5 to create a 1st level spell slot. Or, if your roll was high enough, you could reduce your current hit points by 10 to make 2 1st level spell slots. Regardless of how much you reduce your current hit points by, all of the spent blood points remain spent. Waste not, want not. Beginning at 5th level, you gain an additional way to use the bonus action from your Vascular Overload feature. When you spend a blood point to take a bonus action with Vascular Overload, you can use the bonus action to cast a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. An Infinite Spiral. Once you reach 11th level, your magic fuels your body just as your body fuels your magic. Whenever you cast a spell of 1st level or higher, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to the spell's level plus your Constitution modifier. Sanguine Empowerment. Beginning at 15th level, you can instill your spells with your life force, significantly increasing their potency. When you cast a spell of 1st level or higher that requires you to make an attack roll or a single target to make a saving throw, you can spend 2 blood points and roll 2 dice, reducing your current hit points by an amount equal to the roll. This reduction cannot be prevented or lessened in any way. If you do so, then the attack roll for the spell is made with advantage, or the saving throw is made with disadvantage, whichever applies. If the spell requires both an attack roll and a saving throw, choose one of the rolls to be affected. Once more, from the top. At 20th level, the innate connection between your blood and your magic allows you to trade away your own energy for immense arcane power. As an action, you can spend 4 blood points and roll 4 of your blood dice. You can reduce your current hit points by an amount equal to the roll. This reduction cannot be prevented or lessened in any way. If you lose hit points in this way, you regain all of your spell slots, up to the amount noted on the Blood Mage spellcasting table. Whether you choose to lose hit points or not, the spent blood points remain spent. Once you lose hit points in this way, you cannot use this feature again until you finish a long rest. And this is my Constitution casting 3rd caster, the thing that inspired me to make the class in the first place.
Yeah, I think we should go subclass by subclass, break it up.
Absolutely, yeah.
So my initial thoughts on this, this subclass is an incredible 1-level dip. It is probably this and 2 of the other subclasses, maybe only 1, are, if they're included in the game, the best 1st level dips in the game. And that includes Warlock, and that includes Fighter.
And Cleric. Cleric is another.
And Cleric. Cleric's pretty good too, depending on which domain you choose.
Because of how loaded this class is on level 1, it makes for really, really good level 1 dips, which I would be concerned about if I were going to, if I worked for Wizards, I would be concerned about that. I would be concerned about warping the meta towards a 1-level dip into the Hemoturge. As a homebrewer, and as somebody who doesn't generally play at tables with people who are very dedicated min-maxers, I understand that it's a concern, and I don't mean to, minimize that concern. It's not something I'm super worried about, because the people who I play with and the people who have used this, I think can be trusted with a powerful 1-level dip.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? I'm min max to the extreme. What are you talking about?
The one thought on
your half elven paladin,
as a class that we will be releasing to the public, however, I think it will be important for us to mitigate that in some way, because that will be the only fucking thing they talk about.
Is how good the 1-level dip is.
Now, to actually get into the meat of what's been said here about this subclass, I think that there's a lot here that works for it being a con caster. I think there's a couple options in here that aren't even innate to it being a con caster that make it a little too much. Particularly, I do think Waste Not, Want Not might be a bit much when compared to...
After playing with Waste Not, Want Not, I think I agree.
Yeah, especially when you compare it to, the Eldritch Knight. The Eldritch Knight gets the ability to, if they cast a cantrip as an action, they can make 1 whole melee weapon attack as a bonus action. And they don't get the option to cast a spell and make a weapon attack until 18th level, I believe. This allows you at 5th level to do a spell and a cantrip on each turn, if you have the blood points to do it. And it's good that blood points for this class are on a long rest, because that would be overwhelming. I do not think, however, the rest of the classes should be dragged down, because this class would be too strong because of short rests. And getting into Grisly Arcana, I think Grisly Arcana is mostly okay. I think the scaling for the levels should be a little bit more based on spell points, kind of like the sorcerer is. Like maybe if it was, especially with this being, if we were going to change it to short rest and possibly make bloodlines a higher level, I still think either Wellspring of Life or Bloodline should be a higher level.
Okay, since we're talking about subclasses now, I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
I don't think that Bloodlines can be pushed to a higher level just because 3 of the 4 Bloodlines give you armor or weapon proficiencies as one of the things you get from the Bloodline, and I don't want you to have to be wearing light armor for 1 level and then at level 2 get heavy armor proficiency. I hate that.
I don't think there's a problem with that. I mean, you could be a rogue or the multi-class and a fighter.
Well, sure,
And you have
but
the
if you're
same issue.
multi-class, if you're multi-classing, that's one thing. But there is no class that, assuming you're taking it to level 20, there is no class that lets you gain an armor proficiency past level 1 without taking a feat. Because the only subclasses that grant you armor proficiency are cleric domains, which you get at level 1.
Well, that's not true. The Hexblade gives you armor proficiency, doesn't it?
I believe it does not.
It doesn't?
It
Oh, I
doesn't.
assumed it did.
It gives you a feature.
Well, that's first level anyway.
It gives you a feature that lets you wear armor you're not proficient in without penalty.
Well, then, in that case, I think that Wellspring of Life should be second level. I think one of them should be first level at least, because I think first level should really be spelling out what your class does in some way, whether it be your subclass or the key features. My
problem with that is that 2 of the 4 subclasses, their level 1 feature is something that keys off of either your blood points or something that you're already doing with blood points.
Yeah, and I think this is fixable, but I do think it's necessary. I do not think that you should get both of these at first level. What you could do very easily is grant blood points at first level with like only one of the features, which probably corporeal focus.
It would have to be unnatural recovery for the Chirurgeon.
That's fair. I think there might be some rearranging need to be done for some of these subclass features. I just don't think it should be strong enough for. I don't think it should be as strong of a first level build. And I also don't think that, and this is going back into the short rest situation, I don't think that the rest of the subclasses should be held back by the Blood Mage needing to have a restriction on its power.
I totally agree with you about the Blood Mage being way too powerful with Waste Not, Want Not as it is.
The reason why I was leaning toward putting Bloodlines at a higher level is because Grisly Arcana at first level is deadly to you. Because you'll have to get anything back, take 5 damage with a D6 hit die. Now it's not as bad if you're limited, if you're con based, your con, if you have a +3, is 9. Your HP is 9 at that level, so it's half your HP just to get your spell slot back.
Honestly, you could totally just move Grisly Arcana to level 5. That could be the level 5 feature, and your level 1 feature could just be you get spellcasting. Congratulations, you have spellcasting.
Yeah, I think it should have something else, because all the other third casters get something else with their spellcasting, so I think it should at least have one other thing. But yeah, I think putting Grisly's Arcana to a higher level is a great idea to replace Waste Not, Want Not, and then make something else at first level that maybe plays off of plays off your corporeal focus, actually.
And if we move Grisly Arcana to 5th level, then the only subclass that then relies on the blood points at level 1 is the Chirurgeon. The Chirurgeon could probably be messed with, considering that I came up with it over a span of like 4 hours 2 days ago. So I think I'm getting on board with splitting up Wellspring of Life and the Bloodlines, assuming that we can get the Chirurgeon somewhere where it makes sense. I do think that the Bloodlines you should still get at level 1. I think I'd be alright with moving Wellspring of Life to level 2 if we can fix the Chirurgeon.
Okay.
What do you guys think of Infinite Spiral?
Yeah, so I have notes on that. But Justin, was there anything you wanted to say about those first 2 features?
I'm not gonna lie. This was the only subclass that I just skipped through.
Well, but
This
this is
is
also the only. This is also the only subclass you DM'd for. So.
Ah.
Oh, oh right, yeah, because I played a Juggernaut in your other one shot. But I was gonna say this is the one that you DM'd for most recently. This is the subclass you should be the most familiar with, anyways.
To be fair, we didn't get a whole lot of chances to test out this subclass. But I think so. It's kind of like processing a little bit. So if you want to get back a second level spell slot, but you have like 13 points to spend from,
Then you would only take 10 damage. That extra 3 that you rolled essentially goes to waste. You don't take the damage,
gotcha.
but it does kind of go to waste.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Which is why I specified regardless of how much you reduce your current hit points by, all of the spent blood points remain spent. Because you might roll a really weird roll where it's like, oh, I got a 4 on this one and then 2 1s. So those 2 1s aren't really doing anything. Well, too bad. You already spent the blood points.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
I will say, sorry to interrupt you. I will say that if we are going to move Grizzly Arcana to a higher level, I think it makes more sense to up how much it costs to get the spell slots back and scale them. I think with kind of like how the sorcerer does, as opposed to a linear progression.
The scaling for this was completely arbitrary. I picked these numbers just as, let me start with 5 HP per spell slot, and then I've only gotten one chance to play the Blood Mage, and I don't think I even used Grizzly Arcana in that one shot.
I will say, just looking at how the sorcerers do it, it's 2, 3, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, it's a spell point cost.
Right, yeah, it's not linear at all. But
yeah,
I would maybe do I would do at least we haven't agreed on this yet, but I'm gonna keep on saying it. If we put blood points to a short rest,
I'm on board. Is disagreeing? I've been on board for a while now.
I'm just along for the ride, man. I don't know why you're asking me about this stuff.
I think it would be worth it because if you get the blood points on a short rest, you also get HP back on a short rest, so it kind of helps itself out. And if we keep Renit, you get even more HP back on a short rest, but that's besides the point. It could be.
Honestly, if we're making blood points short rest, Renit could probably just get a straight buff and be fine.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Renit being immediately after Vascular Overload helps the fact that it's selfish, because Vascular Overload is a very great interactive ability. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say that these should be at least 3 times the spell point cost for the spell slot, and at most 5 times.
So you're saying between 6 and 10 HP for a first level slot?
Yeah. Which I think would be manageable for a first level character. Or fifth level character, sorry. 5th level character.
I think that's perfectly cromulent. Do you have 5th level spells? Or do you have 2nd level spells? No, you don't get 2nd level spells until level 7. So yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable for a 5th level character to be spending 6, or maybe you get really greedy and you're like, I'm gonna spend 12 HP to get back 2 spell slots. I like that you've got that possibility.
Yeah. But yeah, you asked about Infinite Spiral, but I did interrupt Justin as he was talking. What were you saying?
I was just trying to come up with a replacement first level ability.
I think that the first level ability for this could afford to be pretty weak, because we said, even without the subclasses, a first level dip in Hemoturge is pretty damn good, and you're getting spellcasting. So I think that the first level ability could afford to be pretty ribbony here. It doesn't need to be something big. Also, we can totally come up with new abilities off camera. Once we've decided that, okay, X needs to move here, and that leaves a gap, we kind of know what needs to go in that space.
I was going to even suggest something as just kind of something as small as another proficiency. So
actually,
so choosing between history, arcana, or religion.
I was thinking the same thing. Since every other subclass gets like armor or weapon proficiencies, the Blood Mage could maybe get like a tool proficiency or an extra skill or something.
I was thinking that we give a magical corporeal focus.
Oh,
Interesting.
So like,
So if you make an attack roll with your sorcerer spells,
well, but if we're splitting up the bloodlines, you won't have. If we're splitting up level 1, you won't have corporeal focus at level 1 anymore.
we don't have to call it corporeal focus. We could just say you can spend a blood point to add the blood roll.
But you won't have blood points at level 1 anymore.
Oh right, no, you're right. You're right. That wouldn't
Right.
work. That wouldn't work. That was my original thought for want not waste or waste not want not, and then we swapped them. I didn't make the connection that you wouldn't have them at that point.
Right.
Hmm.
So for Infinite Spiral,
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad. I think getting temporary hit points when you cast a spell first level higher makes perfect sense. It's similar to the Abjuration Wizard's effect.
Right, the ward.
I will say that changing Vital Force, because this, as we discussed before, you gave each subclass an ability to give temporary hit points because Vital Force relied on temporary hit points to work. For changing Vital Force, that could change that interaction. And I did make the note that it does seem kind of weird to make a band-aid for Grizzly Arcana. It kind of like takes away from the risk that you're taking when you hurt yourself with it.
See, and that was kind of the point of this ability in my eyes.
Right, and I just think it's strange to get a band-aid for your own feature. But that's not entirely outside the realm of 5e. The wild magic sorcerer, for instance, gets a band-aid through a wild magic when they can choose out of 2 rolls which one they get.
Yeah.
This is a personal preference thing. I just generally prefer to get more diverse features as opposed to features that are not necessarily meant to supplement, but meant to like make up for other features. But I think it's fine as it is, to be honest.
Okay, well, and I was going to say, Infinite Spiral isn't really just making up for Grizzly Arcana. It's supposed to just be an extra way for you to be resilient, for you to be, let's be honest, a caster in melee combat. Like,
Yeah.
you're going to be taking hits that you are maybe not prepared to be taking. Like, you don't get armor proficiencies with this subclass, so, like, being able to get some HP back every couple of turns, like, is pretty valuable, I felt.
Yeah, I agree.
I like it. I to me, it's always one of those things for it's just like, does this feel like it is an 11th level ability?
Well,
That
what does
something else I was
what does
thinking of.
the Eldritch Knight get at level 11?
Oh, let's take a
Or
look.
not level 11, but like the closest subclass feature that they get to level 11.
Let's just
Oh,
pull
the
up
Eldritch Knight?
Yeah.
Oh, I had it up. Fuck.
So at 10th level, you learn how to make your weapon strikes undercut a creature's resistance to your spells. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, that creature has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes against the spell you cast before the end of your next turn. So it preps
That's
you.
honestly, that's pretty niche. Right? I mean, it's good. It's definitely good, but like...
No, I don't think so. Because the Eldritch Knight at that point has the you can cast cantrips as a bonus action thing. So
well, no, you cast a cantrip as an action and use your weapon attack as a bonus action.
Oh, okay. I see.
But regardless, you're
Right.
you're essentially giving them disadvantage on the save against a cantrip. You can give them disadvantage on the save against a cantrip every turn, or disadvantage against the save disadvantage on the save against a leveled spell every other turn.
Until 18th level.
Right, until 18th level when you can do both.
Yeah, and that is disadvantage to a 2nd level spell. So at 10th level, so not necessarily the strongest, but if you are making them make a save, and I'm not certain if they get this, but if you are making them have disadvantage on something like Toll the Dead every round.
They don't have access to Toll the Dead. That's not a wizard cantrip.
Yes, it is. I just double checked to make sure.
It
It is.
How
I
the
Yeah.
fuck
just
do
checked
wizards get Toll the Dead?
because they get like everything, dude.
I mean, not cantrip wise.
They get a
I think,
lot
I
of
think they get the most cantrips.
I mean,
So.
yeah, they get the most cantrips, but
They do.
Okay, I did not. I don't think wizards should have Toll the Dead, but that's not my decision to make.
So
Um,
so my idea to kind of make this maybe a little bit more comparable and probably a little strong is uh whatever the best way that I can describe it, whatever level you cast the spell at, that times your constitution modifier for temp HP. So if you
oh
cast
god.
yeah.
So a third level spell, you're getting 15. I don't. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel like that's too good. I feel like that's too much temp HP.
What I will say is that both the Eldritch Knight and the Arcane Trickster around 11th level get abilities which grant the disadvantage on saves.
Should I move Sanguine Empowerment down to level 11 then?
I apologize. The Eldritch Knight gets a disadvantage on saves thing. Eldritch or Arcane Trickster gets advantage on attack rolls, so they get the inverse of the effect.
Okay, so since Sanguine Empowerment is both of those, should I move it down to 11th level then? Like,
I think that would make sense.
Yeah.
okay, so move Sanguine Empowerment down to 11th level, and if Infinite Spiral is going to be a 15th level ability, I think it probably could afford to get buffed.
Yeah, I would say one thing you could do while it's buffed is that while you have the temporary hit points, so harking on to like what Reverse does, while you have the temporary hit points, you have. I was gonna say
You have advantage against spells and other magical effects.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, I mean that would be appropriate. I think.
Yeah, I mean, especially if we're moving that up to a 15th level feature, I think that's fine. You cast a spell, and then it gives you sort of like a short shield. I think that's... Yeah, if we're switching Sanguine Empowerment and Infinite Spiral, I think that's a reasonable buff for Infinite Spiral.
Yeah, I think so.
Hell yeah. Any other thoughts about Infinite Spiral before we move on to Sanguine Empowerment in its own right?
No, it's a pretty simple one.
No.
Okay. So Sanguine Empowerment, this lets you spend blood point. This lets you bloodlet 2 in order to give either advantage on your spell attack or disadvantage on the spell save, but only if it's a single target save.
Yeah, I think that this is fine. I wrote my note. This is neat. The only thing I wrote is that I think the wording could maybe be cleaned up a little bit, because it has to re-explain both attacks and saves, and since they work differently, the person who's rolling a die is different. It's a little strange. I wrote this as a suggestion. I don't know if it's actually better, but I wrote, when you cast a spell, you can spend 2 blood points and roll 2 blood dice. If you do, you can choose a target of the spell. Your first spell attack roll with this spell against that target has advantage, or the first saving throw the target makes against the spell is made with disadvantage, your choice. So it cleans it up a little bit. It's not that much better.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I like that much better than my whichever applies language, but
yeah,
they're both kind of messy. It's just kind of a messy effect to describe.
yeah. What I was going to also suggest was possibly using blood points to instead increase the level at which the spell is cast.
Oh, like Zach's variant druid?
Yeah, though his only does 1. I would say you can spend blood points as if you're spelling sorcery points to increase the spell level, and I think that works really well for a third caster, because it gives them the punch of a full caster, but not the devastating spells to cast.
Right.
Which I think would be a reasonable buff to this. I think either is fine though. It's not really here nor there, honestly.
I really like kind of being able to use a resource to be able to upcast something.
I do too, which is why I made a meta magic for it.
Yeah. That's fair. I think that if we're moving this down to 11th level to move Infinite Spiral up, I'd rather just leave it as this effect.
That's fair.
Than mess around with trying to balance the upcasting thing. What do you guys think of the capstone?
Once more from the top. What did I write for this?
While you read over that real quick, I like it because then you have because
I know what I wrote.
so what I kind of like about this is that you have to kind of play around with how many spell slots have I used? So how many spell slots have I used? Can I afford to spend that health to
Can I
regain
afford to take 4d12 damage?
to
This,
its
what Justin likes about this, I actually dislike about this. This is what I wrote. This sort of seems to fight for attention with Grisly Arcana. I'm just going to expend all my spell slots manually, which could take a while, in order to get the most use from this, or I'm going to use Grisly Arcana over time. Granted, Grisly Arcana is going to make me cost more to use, but if I'm using it, I'm probably not going to need to use this very much. So I'm kind of in between on this because I'm like, I can use Grisly Arcana for immediate satisfaction, but if I ever use it, it makes this less valuable to me because so one of them kind of gets mildly locked out from the other, which I don't like. I think that this should maybe supplement Grisly Arcana as opposed to fight for its attention.
Do you think so? I know that for a level 20 feature, you can turn the dial way up and still be fine because it's level 20.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and that's my problem is that this isn't powerful enough because it's fighting.
Do you think that this could do to just be spend blood points, no bloodletting, just spend blood points?
I think that'd be reasonable.
Maybe up the number of blood points, maybe make it 5 or something.
My concern with that is you get your blood points back on a short rest. So
well, but I mean, as long as you say that this ability is long rest only, that's fine.
Then I guess.
I thought it was something weird.
All right.
It's probably not going to work because most of the spells are abjuration and transmutation, though. I was going to say you can spend a certain number of blood points to cast the spell as if it's 9th level.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
But because they're mostly abjuration and transmutation, I don't think it's going to work as well.
Well, but I mean, you do still get access to, 4 or 5? You get access to 4 spells from any school. So you still get access to, Burning Hands and Fireball.
Yeah. I think it's no secret that a spell cast at 9th level, especially a lower level spell cast at 9th level, is not actually comparable to a 9th level spell.
Yeah.
A 9th level magic missile.
It's not comparable to a 9th level spell.
No. I'm just thinking about that idea of just someone saying, you know what, fuck it. 9th level magic missile. Take all of these D4s, please.
But yeah, I could see that maybe being once per short rest. You can do that. That would be pretty dope.
Yeah, I would say I might even say because of the cost, or because you are casting a spell at 9th level, and if you want to keep this at short rest, I would make this cost a decent amount of blood points, maybe 7, 8. I don't know.
No. So here's the thing. Again, going back to the monk, a lot of key point costs with the regular monk and also with 4 elements. The key points are usually on par in power or in number as the spell slot level. A 4th level spell cast at 9th level is not as good as a 9th level spell. That's just not the case.
It's probably only about as good as a 6th level spell.
And that's why I said
6th or 7th, I would say, yeah.
And that's why I said 7.
I think honestly 5 or 6 blood points to upcast to 9th level. I don't know. I really like. Personally, I'm attached to the name and the idea of getting all your spell slots back. How many blood points do you think that ability would cost? Do you think that's a 5 or 6 point ability too?
If you're attached to getting your spell slots back,
I don't want to say that I don't like your idea. I do like your idea.
You like the name of your feature.
I like the name of my feature. I'm a linguist. I do wordplay, not for a living. I wish I did wordplay for a living. And so I come up with a feature name like Once More from the Top, and I'm like, oh god, I want to
What
say
if-
that in a campaign.
What if once more for the top, instead of like restarting you from the bottom up, it instead lets you repeat something? Like, let's say you.
Oh, what if you spend some number of blood points to to cast the spell twice? Like when you cast a spell
Yeah.
as an action, spend so and so many blood points, and then you can cast the same spell as a bonus action that turn.
Yeah. I was thinking something like that. But that does lead to my same problem with Abjuration and Transmutation. A lot of those are not instantaneous, and a lot of those are concentration. So you kind of lead to the issue of them
That's the
crushing
thing.
each other
That
out.
would be most effective with your 4 spells that aren't from the schools that you're limited
Yeah.
to.
And even then, those spells might be like other concentration spells or other spells that are not instantaneous.
Oh, what if when you lose concentration on a spell, you can spend blood points to immediately cast it again
Without
That-
expending a spell slot.
without expending a spell slot? Yeah.
I don't dislike that. There are already not a bunch, but there's already a couple augmentations that make
There's-
blood mages very good at keeping concentration.
Yeah, there is the one.
But-
Yeah.
But I think that's a strong. I think that's a pretty strong 20th. I think that's a strong enough 20th level ability. Like when you unwillingly lose concentration on a spell, you may spend 2 blood points to essentially ignore. When you would lose concentration on a spell unwillingly, you may spend 2 blood points to not. There's a better way to word that, but essentially that, like.
Yeah. Something like that. Would that be strong enough for a 20th level ability? I think we should really
I don't-
shop this off stream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This one needs to be shopped off stream just because of how much power you need for a 20th level ability.
Yeah.
Are you guys ready to move on to the Chirurgeon?
I think so, yeah. I don't want
Yeah.
to spend too much time on this one. This is like kind of the one because this is what sparked you making the class in the first place.
Yeah.
But
And it's the most complicated one since it's a caster, so it's got a bunch
is
of
the most
extra
complicated,
tiles
that's
to
true.
turn.
I think we can
Um,
move on and then shop that off stream.
Oh yeah. Chirurgeon. The Chirurgeon bloodline is focused on the ability of the blood to heal and to be healed. Chirurgeons tend to adopt a more defensive style of combat, playing cat and mouse games while they keep their allies in fighting shape. Armor training. When you choose this bloodline at first level, you gain proficiency with medium armor and shields. And improved unnatural recovery. When you use your unnatural recovery feature on a creature other than yourself, instead add twice your constitution modifier to the die roll. Furthermore, you can use your unnatural recovery feature twice between rests beginning at first level, and you can use it 3 times between rests once you reach 10th level. So this just gives you 1 extra use per rest of unnatural recovery, but I couldn't think of a good way to word that, so I just had it overwrite the wording of unnatural recovery. Battlefield Medic. Beginning at 5th level, you gain an additional way to use the bonus action from your Vascular Overload feature. When you spend a blood point to take a bonus action with Vascular Overload, you can use a Healer's Kit with the bonus action. Furthermore, when you use a Healer's Kit, you can make a DC 12 Wisdom Medicine check. If you succeed, instead of stabilizing the creature at 0 hit points, roll a blood die, and the creature regains that many hit points. Mass Reknit. Once you reach 11th level, whenever you regain hit points with your Reknit feature, you can have any number of friendly creatures who regained hit points by spending hit dice also regain the additional hit points from your Reknit feature. I hate the wording of that. I hate it. But I couldn't think of a way to word it better. Forced Fruition. Beginning at 15th level, you can force your allies' bodies to heal themselves. As an action, choose a creature within 30 feet that you can see. That creature can spend a number of hit dice up to your proficiency bonus. If the creature does, they roll the spent hit dice. After the roll, the creature can spend additional hit dice as long as the total number of dice spent is less than or equal to your proficiency bonus. Then the creature regains a number of hit points equal to the roll plus their constitution modifier. Once a creature regains hit points in this way, you can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. And Fountain of Ages. Once you reach 20th level, as a bonus action, you can cause healing energy to pour forth from your body. For 1 minute, you gain the following benefits. At the beginning of each of your turns, you regain 1 blood point and roll a blood die. any number of creatures of your choice within 30 feet of you regain that many hit points. Whenever you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you regain a number of hit points equal to the damage dealt, minimum of 1. Once you use this bonus action, you cannot do so again until you finish a long rest.
All right. So, starting from the top. Armor training, sure. Improved natural recovery. I think this is fine. I think the additional use of it and the additional effectiveness of it is pretty good for this subclass at first level.
This is actually the one that we would need to rework, because if we
Yeah.
want to split up first level Bloodline and second level Blood points, this feature needs to be something else. After we talk about Battlefield Medic, I'm going to ask if you think that we could just swap those two features.
So did you have any thoughts on Battlefield Magic real quick, Justin?
On Battlefield...
Or not Battlefield Magic, sorry. On our natural recovery or armor training?
No, I like it. I like that you're able to use it more than the other subclasses. I like that you are better at it than the other subclasses. It definitely feels in with the rest of the theme of this, where it is you are that Battlefield Medic. And
yeah, for sure.
It gives me a lot of vibes from my own essentially kind of Battlefield Medic subclass that I created, but we're not getting into that. And I like that it feels.
That's a story for another time.
Yes, and I like the way that it feels.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
What I'll say about Battlefield Medic, well, first off, if we swap them, we'd have to change things up because you don't get vascular level until 3rd level.
Right. I thought about that earlier when I was thinking about this, and then I forgot about it when I said it.
Yeah. When you spend a blood point, big bonus action, great. I like using a bonus action with the healer's kit. I think that the heal is good. I think the DC 12 is strange. I think it should just stay DC 10.
Yeah. Okay.
And honestly, maybe not even a check.
10?
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of where I was at. I felt like if I made it DC 10, it was kind of like not having a check there at all, because there's an augmentation that gives you expertise with medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that, a DC 10 check with expertise very quickly becomes no problem at all. So like, if you think it's fine as a like no check ability, as just a thing that you can do, I'm fine with that. I just wasn't certain if this was too strong.
I think the fact, because with the healer's kit, it has charges anyway. You can only use it 10 times before it's done. And just making someone who's good or better at that and just gives an additional bonus when they use it, I think is fine enough.
All right, excellent. Yeah, then
I don't think there needs to be like, because I would see like the fact that you need to make a check is essentially a drawback. I don't think there needs to be a drawback for this ability.
Okay, yeah, I think that's totally fine. And that's easy to change. We just delete some text. So it's just, furthermore, when you use a healer's kit, instead of stabilizing the creature, we just delete that half a sentence in the middle.
Yeah. Well, you get blood die at level. Okay, yeah, that's not.
Wait, no, that's the thing. This can't be a level 1 feature, no matter what, because you need vascular overload and the blood die. So I think we just need to come up with something new for level 1.
Well, I thought the blood points was it. I thought the blood points was the thing that was getting moved.
They're both attached, just like.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. Blood points, blood dice, and all of Wellspring of Life. We're planning on moving to 2nd level so that the bloodlines can stay at 1st level.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We can, if you guys don't have any immediate ideas, we can work that off screen.
Yeah.
What's replacing improved unnatural recovery. Mass Renet. Shawn, you said earlier, this is a pretty weak ability. I already said I kind of hate how it's worded. I was having a lot of trouble coming up with an 11th level feature for this subclass, and so this just sort of felt like a kind of a cop-out to me. Do you think, if we buff Renet to maybe be like, I don't know, 2 blood dice plus your con mod, do you think that Mass Renet would be fine?
I mean, yeah, I guess it'd be fine then. But yeah, I mean, I guess it'd be fine. I feel like at 11th level, it's hard to say. I'm gonna be honest. Because what is this? It's a D8 at this point.
Should be D8. Yeah, because you go up to D10 at 13. So D8 for a couple of levels.
So D8. 2d8's
So-
9 plus your con's probably be 5 at this point is 13. I mean, that'd be a decent amount of healing for a short rest. It would
And
encourage more short rests,
And
which
it's for
is
your entire party, so like that's multiplied by 3 to 6.
my only issue with it is that I don't like reknit.
Right, yeah, that's the thing. If you're willing, so here's my argument in favor of reknit. We're already getting rid of 2 features from the base class, so like I don't think that reknit really needs to be on the chopping block at that point. Like
I think reknit needs a buff.
I'm fine with buffing it. I think that reknit is fine being a weaker feature. Like I think it's fine that some features are weak.
Sure. I just think this should be comparable to other features around that level, which I don't think reknit is. But if we buffed reknit, and that would in turn buff mass reknit, then that would probably be okay. Yeah. And this would be, I mean, so far this is already a fantastic non-magical healing option, which there are none in 5e. So,
yeah, the closest you can get to this is being a thief using healer's kits with fast hands, and even then, you aren't bringing those characters back up. You're just making sure they don't die.
Yeah, unless you have the healer feat, and that's when you can heal them for a very minimal amount.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's a pretty decent amount. It's like character level.
There is also the monk from Tasha's.
Oh,
he is magical.
I guess.
It says magical in the feature.
Right. Yeah, he didn't say non-caster healing. He said non-magical healing.
I guess.
He can a monk, and this is the beta among tables. Monks can't do shit in anti-magic fields. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, I think this would be fine if reknit is buffed. Literally, my only note was so actually just stronger Song of Rest, which is fine. Song of Rest is weak, but this feels weak in return or in turn. So I mean, if they both got buffed, then that's fine. My biggest issue with this class is actually Forced Fruition. I think Forced Fruition has the biggest weight on its back for a couple of reasons. One, it's weaker than getting hit dice back on a short rest because this only adds your hit dice all together once plus your con mod.
Yes. This
two,
is no.
It pulls from a resource that you can use for healing in other circumstances, which I don't like for a 15th level ability. I like allowing people to use hit dice outside of short rests, but for that to be your source of healing at 15th level, I think it weakens the effect too much. The healing is good because they can use them as much as their proficiency bonus, which is a good amount of healing. But the fact that it's pulling from their hit dice, I think, brings it down quite a bit because they can't use those hit dice later.
I would even be. Maybe you could let them still roll hit dice, but not expend them. So like they can roll up to your proficiency bonus in their hit die.
That's a good idea because I mean it's already restricted to once per long rest anyway.
And then I can remove the funky language about roll some dice, then spend some more dice, then roll those dice, then keep doing this. Then I can just remove that language because you would have no incentive to ever roll less than your proficiency bonus.
My issue, and this is gonna sound weird, this subclass might have a little too much healing. Every feature is healing at every level, which I think is too much. I think it should have just maybe one other thing. I think.
Well, and I'd be totally fine with replacing Forced Fruition with something else. So Forced Fruition was my addition as your only ranged healing except for your capstone.
That is true.
Everything else you do is touch.
Yeah, I think it could do for some sort of range. I guess technically mass reknit is ranged, but that doesn't really count.
Yeah, I guess I don't think that range over a short rest really counts. But honestly, I think that it's all right if it doesn't have ranged healing. If you need to be able to get to your allies to heal them, for a non-magical healer, I think that makes sense. So I'd be all right with replacing Forced Fruition with a non-healing option. Honestly, it could be a defensive option because the Chirurgeon is the least selfish subclass of all of them.
It is. Yeah, I mean, So I'm looking at all the levels, and I'm like, a lot of these come at like very appropriate levels. I think the 5th level feature comes at an appropriate level. We were talking about either swapping or reworking one of those 2 features, but they're both pretty good. Medic and Unnatural Recovery.
Yeah, that's the, they're both good, I think, but they both rely on your Wellspring of Life feature, which means that one of them needs to be reworked to not rely on Wellspring of Life, or like just completely replaced.
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to replace Improved Unnatural Recovery, but
My only thing is that you have to wait until 15th level to do something other than healing. Because the as we've established with the core class features, there's not much you can do with the core class features. It's almost all in your subclass and your augmentations. Now we are talking about adding some stuff that you can do, but I think I'd want at least one thing maybe a little bit earlier on.
I mean, you've already talked about how you don't like Mass Renit. Do you think that maybe we leave Forced Fruition as is and replace Mass Renit with a non-healing option?
In a vacuum, I don't want to leave Forced Fruition as it is. I think
Okay.
Forced Fruition just, unfortunately, I don't think it's very
when,
good as it
when,
is.
When I say as is, I mean with the changes that you guys have already talked about. Like,
Oh, just not at its level.
Right. I agree that it could use a buff, but like, what do you think with just leaving that ability where it is and then just fixing it as need be, but replacing Mass Renit with a non-healing option?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I don't have an idea, but I think that's a good idea. I don't have an idea of what to replace it with.
Well, and honestly, I don't think that any of what we're saying here is like 100% set in stone until we figure out what we're replacing it with. But
Yeah.
like, we're trying to get an idea of what sort of shape the subclass needs to take.
Speaking of which, I'll be listening back to the podcast again and just writing down notes of what we said we could do or what we want to change, so we can have a more clear picture of what we want to do over the next week.
Absolutely. Makes sense.
And then Fountain of Ages, I think it's perfect. I have no issue with Fountain of Ages.
I have one issue, and this is kind of nitpicky.
How dare you nitpick my capstone?
It's just whenever there are these kind of like abilities for it's like, hey, you transform for a certain amount of time. Outside of I think the Oath of Redemption Paladin.
Oh, I should scroll down a little bit.
They have like 3 things that come along with it.
So for the interest of parallelism, I did think about that, but none of the other Hemoturge subclasses get a stance for their capstone, so I didn't really care. Like, I didn't really care about the parallelism with the Paladin, since this isn't a Paladin.
That's fair.
That was something I considered, and actually, originally, the regaining a blood point and healing your allies was listed as 2 separate features, but I had them both triggering at the beginning of your turn, and so I thought it was easier to just have the 1 trigger and 2 effects.
Fair. I don't have an issue with it. I think it's good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Maybe increase the range a little bit, but I think 30 feet's fine.
30 feet's already pretty big, and you're healing any number of creatures within that range.
Yeah.
Like, worth noting, that doesn't proc until the beginning of your next turn. So you've got a whole turn to get into position for it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, you guys ready to move on to the Juggernaut?
Let's move on to the Juggernaut. I will say off the bat, I think the Juggernaut is clearly the most self-contained, and I think it does suffer for that.
Okay.
Because this is the one that I played, so we'll get into that in a bit. So go ahead.
The Juggernaut. The Juggernaut Bloodline is one of exceptional endurance and fortitude. Juggernaut Hemoturges take resilience to absurd extremes and are incredibly difficult to keep down for very long. Defensive training. When you choose this bloodline at first level, you gain proficiency with medium armor, heavy armor, shields, and 1 martial weapon of your choice that lacks the heavy and special properties. Enriched Vitality. You are unnaturally hale and hardy, giving you exceptional resilience. At first level, your hit point maximum increases by 2, and it increases by 2 whenever you gain a level in this class. Arterial Reinforcement. Starting at 5th level, you can momentarily harden a part of your body to protect yourself from an attack. As a reaction to being hit by a weapon attack, you can spend a blood point and roll your blood die, reducing the damage dealt by the number you roll on the blood die plus your constitution modifier. Unstoppable life force. Once you reach 11th level, your vitality becomes overwhelming. You gain resistance to necrotic damage, and your hit point maximum can't be reduced by any means. Life's Dynamo. At 15th level, you are nigh unstoppable. At the beginning of each of your turns, if you are conscious, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to your constitution modifier. And Too Stubborn to Die. When you reach 20th level, you have reached the pinnacle of vitality and cannot be brought to your knees except by the strongest effects known. While you have more than half your maximum hit points, you have resistance to all damage types except psychic. While you are conscious, any effect that would kill you outright instead reduces you to 0 hit points and knocks you unconscious. You have an advantage on death saving throws. Furthermore, whenever you stabilize or regain hit points while unconscious, you can spend all of your remaining blood points, roll that many of your blood dice, and regain an amount of hit points equivalent to the roll plus twice your constitution modifier. Once you spend your blood points in this way, you cannot do so again until you finish a long rest. This is the shortest text of any of the subclasses.
It is indeed. So starting from the top, we've already addressed the level dip issue. We don't need to address that again, though. This would be pretty appetizing still, even with the augmentation or everything else moved to second, but not any more appetizing than like a cleric.
Right, not any more appetizing than like life cleric. So
yeah, in fact, a cleric's probably more appetizing because you get spells with that at least.
Yeah.
Whereas this, you would just get the proficiency and then without the drawback of a d6 hit by basically, and that's it. I think the first level's fine. I think I think it's fine.
The first level is definitely a good. I like the enriched vitality. It is definitely one of those things. We see it once already in the Draconic Sorcerer Bloodline.
Yep.
And I like this because the whole concept behind the Juggernaut is that they are just kind of this big beefy tank ball. The couple times that I've seen it. The couple times that I've seen it used, you are the one that is just soaking up damage left, right, and center, and you are just not giving a single fuck in the entire world. Saying that, the one issue that I felt like that I had with it is that there isn't much that you can really do to essentially be that can essentially draw that sort of attention.
That's exactly my criticism with this.
There's
attack.
There's nothing in the subclass that draws attention.
Yeah.
There's a couple of augmentations that try to do it, but there's nothing in the subclass that does it.
That's my biggest takeaway with the Juggernaut is that the role I'm supposed to be fulfilling, I can't fulfill because my enemies don't give a fuck about me because I don't do anything.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. You are given a bunch of buffs that make you hard to deal with, but then you are not given any incentive to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Unless you get some sick magic items from your DM. In which case, whatever.
Well, and that's and you can't design a class based around that.
Yeah.
I will say that, and I know we can see this on the page, at least from where I can see it. The next subclass, and I can tell you were saving extra attack just for that subclass. But I think that the Juggernaut should also get it just to give it a little bit more presence.
I think I agree with that, and I think honestly, if you added that, it would help a lot with the self-contained nature of the subclass.
So if I give Juggernaut extra attack, move arterial reinforcement to level 11 and just drop unstoppable life force?
I would say just keep everything.
Yeah.
Oh, seriously? Just give it extra attack on top of everything it already has?
Yeah.
I think so.
Because
that first level is pretty bland. So it makes up for the fact that the 5th level would be kind of stacked.
So I was gonna say that would make this the only class. This would make this the only thing in the game where you get extra attack and another feature at level 5.
That's not true. The
monks.
fighter. Oh, and monks, yeah.
I don't know what
Um,
fighters get at level 5, but monks get
or
stunning
not
strike.
fighter. Sorry. Oh, what's the other one? Sorry. Yeah, monks get stunning strike, which is a very powerful ability to get at 5th level.
I didn't realize that monks didn't get stunning strike until level 5. I thought they got it.
Yeah.
I thought they got that at 4.
I think they also get more unarmored movement as well at 5th level.
They don't.
They don't. Okay.
Paladins and rangers, they get 2nd level spell slots.
Yeah, that's what it was. The half casters.
Oh, okay.
And I think the rogue.
Rogue doesn't get extra attack.
I don't know why. I thought the rogue gets extra attack.
If the rogue got extra attack, we would be in a completely.
I was thinking of my own fighter, which gets a special extra attack.
The rogue was what I was going to use for my example of something that only has 1 attack, but because of sneak attack, it makes itself a threat that way.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's fair.
So that's why, and I think maybe too with the upcoming next subclass, I do have kind of a tweak that I think could help make it feel a little better, but we'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah. Okay. I also think even on top of the extra attack, I think there's some of these abilities can be buffed a little bit.
Okay. We've started talking about the Juggernaut like writ large, but so what do you guys think of arterial reinforcement as its own ability?
I don't think it needs a blood point cost. The monk gets deflect missiles with no cost. They only spend a key point to throw it back. This is weaker than that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. After playing the Juggernaut, I agree that this is a pretty weak ability when it costs you your blood point. Costing your reaction is kind of enough. So I think that's totally fine to remove the blood point cost from arterial reinforcement. Unstoppable Life Force. This is literally cribbed wholesale from the Necromancy Wizard. It really fit the Juggernaut, so I was fine with that.
I agree. I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. I don't know what level the Necromancy Wizard gets it at.
They get it at 10.
Yeah.
So you get it 1 level later than them.
I think it's fine. It helps to fill that role that we talked about, and it did suck in the fight that we got to see because this is a really good ability. Unless something can overcome it. But even still...
Which is such a rare ability that I don't think it's worth designing around. It's just that I happened to have the bad luck of playing this subclass against a homebrew monster that dealt necrotic damage that overcomes resistance. And so it's like, okay.
But also the hit point being reduced, that is also something that is also like something that is decently on par where I'd say it's a little bit below average for when it comes up, but when it comes up, this
is kind of a ribbon ability on the Necromancer Wizard, even. It's just, it's a ribbon ability that fit perfectly for the class, so I was like, let me just steal that.
I wrote, Resistance to Necrotic's pretty good, no max HP is pretty damn good, though situational. I think another ribbon might be appropriate here, because this is fairly ribbon-y, but Resistance to Necrotic damage is no joke. A lot of things do necrotic damage. It's 11th level, which feels a little high to get a resistance like this. There's a lot of other resistances that other classes get at lower levels, but I don't think it's straying too far from the course. And if we're adding extra attack and buffing some other features, I think this is fine at 11th level. What is this? And depending on how we change the core class, it could be between some pretty decent options.
Right. Life's Dynamo. Temp HP equal to your con mod every turn.
I don't think you have to be conscious for this. Because if you're unconscious and get temp HP, you don't come up. It just makes you harder to kill while you're down.
Right. It's just that's a weird enough interaction that I didn't want it coming up every time a Juggernaut is unconscious.
Well, how often is that even going to be to begin with?
I mean, yes, ideally that shouldn't be happening, but I didn't want to make it easy for you to gain temp HP while unconscious, just because I don't think it's obvious to the naive reader that doesn't bring you up. And that does make you harder to kill while unconscious.
What I'll say is that when you come to high-level features, I don't think caring about the naivete of the players is going to matter, because they've probably been playing for a while at that point.
I think that even players who've been playing for a while would easily get confused about what happens when I'm at 0 but gain temp HP, because that's not a thing that happens very often, just because there's not a ton of ways to gain temp HP passively, and most of the ways that you're going to be given temp HP are going to be things that you're doing outside of battle, or they require you to be conscious anyways, because they require you to be like a creature that you can whatever, you know?
Here's a weird idea. Instead of temporary HP, a damage threshold.
Oh, give them like DR?
Not DR. They take the full damage, but they don't take any damage if it isn't a certain amount.
So if you
Okay, so point one, giving them that ability would require me to get rid of one of the augmentations that is only available to Juggernauts.
Mm.
2, I'm not sure I actually like that ability that much. I don't like what I would have to say to make that obvious, like how it works.
That'd be really easy. What do you mean? If you take if
you would take less than 10 damage, you instead take no damage.
Like, yeah, it's that
I don't
simple.
know. That feels. I don't know. That just feels bad to me. Like, not as a mechanic. Like, if I were a player who read that, I'd be like, "Oh, that's sick. I love that ability." But as a designer who is going to write these words down, that like makes me twitch a little bit. Like,
I don't have that feeling. I think that sounds dope as fuck.
I can't put my finger on why that bothers me. And also, this is the only way for the Juggernaut to get temp HP, and
that's true.
We don't know yet how we're changing Vital Force, but that's one of the things that is supposed to combo with Vital Force, is that you're getting temp HP every turn as the Juggernaut.
That's fair. I still think that you should get rid of the conscious clause, personally, but
I did find something that can happen at level 1. Heroism gives temp HP at the start of a creature's turn. So at level 1, if someone goes down and they have heroism on them from someone else casting it on them, they get temp HP. So
right,
the precedent is there.
Yeah, I guess it's just I don't like. That feels like I'm designing a trap for somebody, you know? That if I don't have the "if you are conscious" clause in there, it feels like somebody's going to read this and think, "Oh, every turn I spring back up from unconsciousness." And that's not at all what I want happening here. Like,
I think you're over worrying about that. I'm gonna be honest. Like, it's 15th level. People are playing at that point. If the table fucks that up, that's just gonna create a fun, interesting moment. And if it's a frustration for the DM's like, let me look this up real quick. Like, I don't think it's gonna be as big of an issue as you think it's going to be.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's 4 words. If you want to strike it, that's fine. What do you guys think of Too Stubborn to Die?
I love everything except that when you're above half your maximum HP. I think it should be below, personally.
Okay.
Other than that, I think it's awesome.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's an easy switch. I just I don't remember why it's the way that it is, honestly.
My picture of this is, well, I mean, maybe this is partly coded by the fact that I know what bloodied means in 4E, but you're covering your blood and it's defending you when you're below half HP. Like, you're manipulating the blood that's on your own person to defend yourself, which I think is a dope picture. I don't get that picture when you're at full HP.
See, the way that I was picturing it was more that, like, your body is its own shield, and only once you've been brought below half health can they even start damaging you properly.
This was also something that Adam had pointed out to me, because Adam and I remember talking about this. It's sort of like, hey, here's an ability that works when you are above half your HP, and then this Too Stubborn to Die ability, chances are you're gonna have a decent amount of blood points left when you go down. You probably will have like 7, 8. So then you roll all those D12s.
Yeah, you're regaining like 6 to 8 D12 plus 10 HP. Like,
so But I think kind of giving it that ability.
Well, and actually, if we change the trigger to while you're below half your maximum, you're probably gonna stay below half your maximum even after you come back up with this. So you come back up and still have that resistance. That's actually I
Yeah.
like that a lot. I think I like that change, Shawn. That's good.
Yeah, I was gonna.
I
I
think
was
it
gonna
also
add,
fits the name better, to be honest, because it's like
yeah.
Sure.
like not only are you coming up stronger out of death, you're also just hard to put down. You're too stubborn to die. Like,
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. I think that fits the name really well.
other than that, though, I like the rest of this.
Yeah.
I'm because it's an all or nothing. I think it's fine. I would have been inclined if I designed this to make it an option of how many blood points to spend, but I don't. One or the other, I don't think really is that much different. Either it's all your blood points once per long rest, or it's a number of blood points and you eventually use all of them. The issue with using all of them, though, is you can just keep doing it, or not using all of them. I mean, you can just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why there's also the caveat of you can only do this. You can do so again until you finish a long rest.
Right. What I was
think
saying is that having the option of choosing how many you spend, which in of itself would be restricted by your short rest restriction, but in that scenario, you could just do it over and over again over a short rest, which might not be too bad for a 20th level ability, but the all or nothing is pretty epic, so
yeah.
it has a feel to it. It would only feel bad if you get dropped with none, which could be possible if you get dropped after already having used it, or if you're just not great with keeping blood points around.
Yeah.
But
Well,
the
and
Juggernaut doesn't
honestly,
have a lot of ways of using blood points, so
especially once we take the blood point cost off of arterial
Yeah.
reinforcement, then they only have vascular overload and reflexive defense to use. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
any other comments about the Juggernaut before we move on to the Scarlet Knight?
No, what I will say is that with these changes, I wish I had them when I was the Juggernaut.
Yeah, same.
I wish Adam had these changes when he was playing the Juggernaut.
All right, let's move on to the Scarlet Knight because we've already been at this for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
We knew it was gonna be long.
The Scarlet Knight bloodline is for those Hemoturges who wish to focus on honing their ability to dole out punishment to their enemies on the battlefield. Scarlet Knights are vicious and relentless in battle, using even their own spilt blood against their foes. Martial training. When you choose this bloodline at first level, you gain proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. Fighting style. At first level, you adopt a style of fighting as your specialty. Choose one of the following options. You can't take a fighting style option more than once, even if you later get to choose again. I'm pretty sure I just gave them all of the fighting styles that fighters have access to. I didn't give them unarmed fighting. So let me just list them: archery, blind fighting, defense, dueling, great weapon fighting, interception, protection, and two weapon fighting. So that's most of the fighting styles. They didn't get access to Blessed Warrior or Druidic Warrior. They didn't get access to unarmed fighting, and I didn't give them any of the UA fighting styles just because some of those were kind of fucked up. Extra attack. Beginning at 5th level, you can attack twice instead of once whenever you take the attack action on your turn. Vengeful Ichor. Beginning at 11th level, you can cause your blood to spring forth from your wounds, attacking your enemies. As a reaction to being dealt damage by a melee attack, you can spend blood points and roll that many of your blood dice. The creature that damaged you takes an amount of piercing damage equal to the roll of the blood dice plus your constitution modifier. A well-oiled war machine. Beginning at 15th level, you can help your allies seize the proper moment in combat. Whenever you spend blood points, you can choose a creature within 60 feet of you that can see and hear you. That creature can use their reaction to make a melee or ranged weapon attack. Once a creature uses their reaction in this way, you cannot use this feature again until the beginning of your next turn. Bloodthorn Lashes. When you reach 20th level, your body and blood instinctively and indiscriminately lash out at those who would do you harm, giving you a wide variety of opportunities to punish your enemies. Whenever a creature makes a melee attack against you when you are below half your maximum hit points, that creature takes an amount of piercing damage equal to your constitution modifier. This damage counts as magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance. Furthermore, if the attacking creature is within your reach, you can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against the creature.
All right. So, right off the bat, I think that both martial training and fighting style are necessary. Well, fighting style is not necessarily necessary, but I think it's a good choice to have it. I think maybe one additional weapon ability at first level would be a good choice, though.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
fighting style is normally paired with something else, like spell casting, second wind, others. I think those are the only two actually.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody else who gets fighting styles.
Just fighters and rangers, or fighter,
And
ranger, paladin.
Paladin.
Yeah.
Swords Bard. Swords Bard gets fighting style.
Oh, do they? Do they get that as their only subclass ability, actually? If they do,
don't
then maybe it's
know,
fine.
though.
Let me check here in in my
whoops.
handy Zandy Xanathar's guide. Can you tell that
Swords
I
Bard.
love my books?
No, they get Blade Flourish along with it.
Okay, so they should probably get another first level ribbon feature.
I think so.
You guys have already said that you think extra attack's a good idea on this, and that in
Yeah.
fact it should probably be added to the Juggernaut.
Yeah.
A Vengeful Ichor, thoughts on that?
My initial thought with Vengeful Ichor is that I think this also needs to be magical for the purposes of overcoming resistance. At level 11, I think that's necessary for this to be useful.
That's fair. Honestly, I thought that I had included that text on Vengeful Ichor. I didn't realize that it was only on Bloodthorn Lashes. So I think that's fine to add, just straight up add to Vengeful Ichor.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Justin?
I like it. I don't have too much of an issue with it, other than what you guys have already said about adding that it overcomes resistance.
Cool.
I will say, for the 5th level for like, if we're giving extra attack to the Juggernaut, maybe also give a 5th level feature to the Scarlet Knight. Or I had another idea, because obviously this
Did you put that in
Scarlet Knight.
quotes? Did you say idea?
No, I went like
Idea?
this. I went
okay.
like this.
Or
Or
doing a Doctor Strange.
yeah, I was doing this. Or maybe even come up with a augmentation that allows them to attack 3 times. Once again, lock it behind a higher Scarlet Knight level.
I don't see that being unreasonable. But
Yeah, that's not crazy. I'm just not sure I want to break the barrier
Yeah.
of giving someone other than fighters a 3rd attack.
I do that
Right.
for the Magus. Though it's a
Oh,
capstone
okay.
ability. It's 20th
Okay.
level, so.
And also the Oath of Conquest Paladin gets an extra attack on top of that too.
What you could do is give them a feature that says they can use their Vascular Overload to make an attack with a bonus action.
Ooh, actually, I kind of like that. Because that kind of lets them just do like the frenzy rage of the barbarian.
Yeah.
Except it's not the shitty frenzy rage of a barbarian.
Yeah, it's not
Right.
garbage.
Yeah,
And it
so
costs a resource as well. So
Yeah,
it's
I
not something
think
they're
they-
going to do every turn or anything like that.
Yeah, I think they're giving them an extra ability at 5th level that lets them use Vascular Overload to make a single melee weapon attack would be fine.
Yeah. I will say it does kind of hurt the 2 weapon fighting style choice. It kind of clashes with that. But I think
yeah.
honestly, maybe you could just drop 2 of them fighting as an option, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I think
so-
the way this thing is built is like you're supposed to be defensive, so like a shield's probably going to be something that you want.
I gave it 2 weapon fighting because I gave it all of the fighting styles that are available to more than just one class.
I see.
Yeah, that's the thing. I gave it all of the fighting styles that more than one class gets access to, just because those ones don't have a flavor reason why they should be limited. So I gave it all of them that more than just the fighter gets access to, or more than just paladin. You know.
Here's another one you could give. Just you can whenever you're taking the attack action, you can spend a blood point to make an additional attack.
I prefer the Vascular Overload choice because it consumes the bonus action as well, and it's Vascular Overload, which has synergy with other things.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair.
Which when I'm thinking about features for this thing, I'm gonna be looking for things that work with Vascular Overload.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's all right if there's a non-bow with 2 weapon fighting built in. I think that's all right, because there's kind of a non-bow with protection and interception both being available, right? Like, there's just
Why are those a non-bow?
Well, because they both use your reaction, and one is mostly better than the other.
I guess
and
that's
also,
true.
and also interception and protection both use your reaction, which Vengeful Ichor also uses. Like, there's a built-in non-bow of the like tension for that.
I
So,
guess
like,
that's true.
I think it's all right if there's the non-bow of 2-weapon fighting, and well, and that's the thing. There's already the non-bow because you want to be using your vascular overload anyways, right?
Yeah.
So
I think at least one fighting style we should drop is archery.
Yeah.
the class doesn't really have any right being an archer.
Yeah. I think
mostly
to
just
fit,
because none of its other
yeah.
features really work if you're an archer.
I think that this might have a couple too many fighting styles, just generally because like the ranger and the paladin only got 4 of the base ones, and then the swords bar only gets 2 of them. So I think reducing this down a couple of fighting styles might be a good idea.
Right, yeah, that's the thing. Because I gave this all of the ones that available to the paladin and the ranger, that means that it got 6 instead of 4.
Yeah. I think the paladin and ranger both got 2 of the TCE ones. It looks like you gave them 2 of the TCE ones as well. But yeah, I think
paladin and because paladin got interception and blessed warrior, ranger got blind fighting and druidic warrior. Yeah, so
yeah. So that makes sense.
Thoughts on well-oiled war machine?
What I wrote was, this is pretty dope. That's all I wrote.
Yeah, I love it. And because because you don't have to use your reaction or any, like, it's essentially, oh, on my turn I use a blood point.
Not even necessarily on your turn.
Right. This is how I'm going about it. On my turn, use a blood point to vascular overload. Hey, you over there, make an attack. What I'm trying to think of what else. You get hit. Just, hey, you over there, make an attack.
Right.
And I'm trying to think of, like,
but not twice in the same turn cycle, because it does say once a creature takes their reaction this way, you can't use this feature again until the beginning of your next turn.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you can't just spam this. That would be wild.
You can trigger it off of a reaction if you didn't trigger it on your turn, but you can only do it once in a turn cycle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
My bad. I misread that.
Which, if you use Vengeful Ichor, you can use it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty nice. Good 15th level ability. I don't think there's really much wrong with it, honestly. I think, honestly, Scarlet Knight's probably my favorite of the 4, or at least as they're written. I think favorite's a strong word. Favorite implies that I like everything about it more than all the others. That's not true. I think it came off as the best designed out of the 4.
Yeah, I think that the Scarlet Knight is the one that needs the least fiddling with to present a good
that's really what I mean
experience to play with, because I still think that the Juggernaut and the Blood Mage have a ton of potential. I'm less certain about the Chirurgeon because I only came up with it like 48 hours ago. But I still think that the Juggernaut and the Blood Mage have a ton of potential to provide a good experience. But they didn't when I played them. So they definitely need to work. But when I played a Scarlet Knight, it worked really well. The class just worked. Thoughts on Bloodthorn Lashes, the capstone?
So I wrote on the reading it just now. I liked it again, but I wrote here, feels kind of weak compared to the other 3. Could probably go with not having the restriction based on your health, though making it more intense while under half would also be pretty cool. Maybe remove the reaction needed for the retaliation when under half, because I think that because you get the benefit when you're under half HP, and it's a good benefit. The auto piercing damage is a good benefit. And it overcomes magical resistance. And you can also use your reaction to make the weapon attack against the creature. At 20th level, I don't think you need the health restriction to do that. I think this is weaker than the Juggernaut's 20th level ability when it comes to being under half.
Okay, sure. I'm willing to remove that restriction. I put that restriction on there because I thought that the ability was too strong without it. But
at most, that's just 5 damage.
5 damage every time you take a hit.
Right. And I mean, at 20th level, that's...
Right, but at 20th level, you're facing creatures with 3 and 4 attacks per round.
Yeah.
Right. And I think and that's why I'm saying I think they will have the health pool to be able to handle just
I
hitting
mean,
you.
sure, they can handle taking an extra 20 damage a turn, but like that's still an extra 20 damage a turn. Like,
Yeah, it's I think it's pretty badass. I just don't think the health restrictions necessary.
Yeah.
Just because
No,
it's 20th level. If this was any other level, I think the health restriction might be necessary, and it might be too strong. Because it's 20th level, I think that just a base retaliation damage is fine.
all right, I'm fine with that. Like I said, I only put the restriction in there because I thought it was too strong without it.
Yeah.
So overall thoughts on the Scarlet Knight? Maybe remove a couple of the fighting styles and give it an extra feature at 5th level to let you vascular overload for an attack.
A ribbon at first, a ribbon at 5th. Get rid of the blood point expenditure for Vengeful Ichor.
Wait, no, absolutely not. Vengeful Ichor, the damage scales on the blood points spent.
No. Oh wait.
No, wait. I'm
my
thinking.
bad.
I got to mix up with the Juggernaut ability in my head.
Yeah.
I was like, we already discussed that.
We just wanted to add the overcomes magical resistance.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, thank
Counts
you.
as magical for the purposes of
War Machine, I think, is perfectly fine. And then Bloodthorn Lashes, perhaps make it just a tad stronger by getting that restriction for half health.
Yeah, I think those are all good changes.
Overall, I think the Scarlet Knight does a really great job of both being a threat, but also punishing people for trying to take you out at the same time. Which I think is a cool combination, because it's like you want to ignore the Scarlet Knight because attacking the Scarlet Knight's gonna fuck you up, but you also can't because it's gonna fuck you up anyway, which I think is pretty cool.
I'm as much as I like all of the other subclasses here, I'm kind of proudest of the Scarlet Knight just because it's the one that I felt obligated to come up with the Scarlet Knight. Like, I didn't have an idea for it, and I was like, oh yeah, let me just start writing stuff down. I was like, well, I've got the Juggernaut and the Blood Mage. I kind of need like a fighter version of the subclass. Like, let me see what comes out of that. And I think it came out really well for something that I wasn't particularly inspired to create. I was just like, well, that's kind of what this needs, isn't it?
I think so.
I think this is also.
I think the Scarlet Knight fills a hole this class needed for sure. Sorry, Justin. I interrupted you 3 times in a row.
I think as a whole, as you've written it out, the Scarlet Knight is probably the most well balanced out of all of the subclasses. And I think, I think you also, I think you were maybe just also were kind of recognizing like, well, the Juggernaut is this big ass, badass, awesome tank, but what else does it do? Scarlet Knight does what else it does.
Yeah.
But I love it, and I think just we've talked about our small tweaks that need to be made, and it's just really good. And also,
I'll say,
this is somewhat off topic, but I remembered something about like 5th level for the Juggernaut, giving it like something else. Barbarians get the extra movement at 5th level.
Oh, right. Barbarians get a feature with extra attack. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I feel I'm all right with giving them extra attack and reinforcement then, because I was concerned about giving them something else with extra attack. I didn't realize how many other classes got another feature with it.
Yeah.
What I'll say is that with your inclusion of the Chirurgeon, I think that you have filled the 4 main fantasies that come along with blood manipulation.
Yeah.
I think the addition of that class filled that hole, even if it was kind of rushed, and is supremely new compared to the other ones. I think it's necessary. I think someone who thinks of like blood manipulation is one of the first things to think of as a healer. It's either blood magic, a blood healer, a blood weapon user like turns weapons into blood, or someone who uses blood as defense, which is around the same thing. But I think the Juggernaut and the Scarlet Knight do a good job of like parsing those 2 fantasies against each other. So I like all the subclasses.
Oh yeah, I'm happy that you guys like them. I'm glad that you weren't pulling any punches in terms of the criticism. Like,
absolutely
guys,
not here on this show.
Yeah,
not at all.
I appreciate that. But I'm glad that we were able to get through all of these. And then, do you think we have time to do a quick run through the Sanguine Augmentations?
I think
as
so.
long I think as long as we just keep it quick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lightning
'cause
round. Lightning
I
round.
Anyway,
yeah,
let's
lightning round, because I do have to wake up at 5:30 for work. So Sanguine Augmentations. Aqueous membranes. A thick membranous coating on your skin makes you as comfortable underwater as you are on dry land. You can breathe underwater and gain a swimming speed equal to your walking speed.
Dig it.
Blood
Move on.
Hell yeah.
Fuck
Blood
yeah.
in the water. Prerequisite, 10th level, Scarlet Knight Bloodline. Once you've drawn blood, you become even more difficult to repel. When you hit a creature with a melee attack on your turn, you have an advantage on opportunity attacks you would take against that creature until the start of your next turn.
I thought this one was a bit underwhelming for its level requirement.
Okay. Think
I
maybe
think-
push it down to a 6th level option?
Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be a good place to put it. The one thing I have an issue with is the Scarlet Knight has a lot of reactions.
Yeah, they are kind of reaction heavy.
And this feature isn't going to help that because you're going to be trying to force as many opportunity attacks as possible with this feature.
Yeah.
So that one's a little rough. I think there could be something we can like modify on it maybe. 6th level I think would fix at least the power. But I think there's the bigger issue of the possibly having a little too many reactions.
Right, because between this and Vengeful Ichor, you're kind of conflicted about what to use your reaction for. Do you want to hit them as they're moving away, or do you want to entice them to hit you? So
Yeah.
Justin, any thoughts?
No, kind of same worries. About you have to weigh whether or not you think this creature is going to run from you.
Right.
Yeah.
And like if you take this, I think this is something that would be better if you take this early because you're more kind of inclined to run into like things that are more likely.
And
to
also, if you take this early, you don't get Vengeful Ichor until 11th level.
Yeah, and so by that time,
and you can swap out the augmentations later. So, like, this would be an augmentation that you could take at 6th level and then swap it out when you get Vengeful Ichor, and you've got something better to do with your reaction.
Yeah.
So chitinous plating. Prerequisite 6th level Juggernaut Bloodline. Your flesh has become hardened over, like the shell of an insect. Whenever you are dealt non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, reduce the damage dealt by your Constitution modifier.
I could see this one getting flack for stacking with Heavy Armor Master.
Okay.
Because the Juggernaut does get heavy armor.
Yeah.
So that would be my main concern about it. Is that with Heavy Armor Master it would be at a reduction of 8 probably, which is quite a bit. It is a lot.
But that is only non-magical, and that
it is only non-magical, so that's not as bad.
Yeah, that falls off pretty easily.
I wouldn't say it falls off. Dragons do non-magical damage.
Right, that's the thing. That's always a good reduction, but it gets less and less relevant as you're dealing with a diversity of damage types and magical weapons.
Yeah. I do think a lot more creatures will try to kill you with like necrotic damage and stuff as opposed to slashing and bludgeoning, but usually their slashing and bludgeoning isn't magical. I think a lot of devils have magical, but dragons don't. I think angels do. I don't think demons do. It's a very up in the air type of thing.
I think the only demons that do are ones with magical weapons.
The Tarrasque doesn't.
The Tarrasque doesn't. The normal Tarrasque, which is a little baby Tarrasque. But I could see some people going up in arms about this particular one. I don't mind it all too much because of the non-magical stipulation. But
there is also another little caveat about it because there is another kind of augmentation synced up around it.
That's something I wanted to bring up. I didn't want to go to the next one immediately. I wanted to go to the one that is based on this.
Sure. Yeah. So let's go to the one that has this one.
Reinforced plating.
Reinforced plating, yeah. So prerequisite Juggernaut Bloodline, chitinous plating augmentation. Your skin has become even more hardened, approaching the defensive capabilities of plate or chain. While you're not wearing any armor, your armor class equals 10 plus your dex mod plus your con mod. You can use a shield and still gain this benefit. It gives you the barbarian's unarmored defense as long as you already have chitinous plating.
My issue with this one is this feels like it should be the prerequisite for the resistance.
I'm totally fine with swapping them around because actually this one doesn't really make sense because by the time you get to this, you've spent 6 or 7 levels getting heavy armor. Like you probably
Yeah.
spend a lot of money on your heavy armor. I think it would make more sense for this to be the lower level one, and then so chitinous plating. I would just rename this one chitinous plating, and then rename chitinous plating reinforced plating, and swap the level requirements around. Yeah,
and that would mostly fix the heavy armor master stacking, because if you're doing a heavy armor build, you don't want to take this fucking augmentation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then I think that would be perfect. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm fine with that swap. Eye for an Eye. Prerequisite 6th level, Scarlet Knight Bloodline. Your combination of martial training and your hemoturgical skill allows you to endow your attacks with additional force. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can spend a blood point. If you do so, add your con mod to the damage. Once you spend a blood point in this way, you can't do so again this turn.
I just wrote 2 blood points to add con to both attack and damage when combined with corporeal force. Not bad. I don't mind this one at all.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Yeah, I thought that this one was good, but not phenomenal, and that's why I left it behind 6th level, because I didn't want people dipping for it, but I was like, yeah, this is fine.
I think it's a good call. Well, you have to dip 2 levels to get augmentations regardless, but still.
Yeah. Fuel for the Fire. Prereq, 10th level, Blood Mage Bloodline. Your mastery of spellcraft and your own body allow you to intensify your spells. Once you gain this augmentation, you add your con mod to the damage you deal with sorcerer cantrips.
Level request might be a little too high, but I think it's good.
It's rough because 6 and 10 are both equidistant from divine or from the cleric thing.
Yeah.
Spellcasting.
Well, what about the evocation wizard? What level do they get this at?
Ooh, I think 6th. I want to say 6th.
Let me check. Pulling up.
That might be sculpt casting
now. Okay, wizard gets it at 10.
At 10? Okay.
Oh, wait,
I don't have an issue with 10th level for this, honestly.
No, you can add your intelligence modifier to 1 damage roll of any wizard evocation spell.
Right. So at 10th level, evocation gets it for any spell, but the thing they get for cantrips is that you save for half instead of saving for none. So, the evocation wizard doesn't actually get this effect exactly, but I think they get... I don't know.
I think clerics...
Well, okay, actually, once we take away Waste Not, Want Not, I think this is fine, moving it down to level 6.
Yeah. I also think 6 is appropriate because most of your spells are Abjuration or Transmutation.
Your cantrips aren't restricted in that way.
Oh, you're right. Your cantrips are restricted. So never mind. Sorcerers have plenty of damage in cantrips.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You get access to Firebolt and Poison Spray, so you're fine on damage from cantrips.
Yeah.
Hail and Sooned. Your bodily control gives you access to greater levels of skill in certain areas. Choose 2 of Acrobatics, Athletics, Medicine, or Survival. If you aren't proficient in the chosen skills, you become proficient. Your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check that uses one of those skills. It's essentially just expertise in one of those two of those 4 things.
I think that's fine. Nice. Is that pronounced Sooned?
So, not always, but I'm taking this phrase from a Scottish song, and in Scots it's pronounced sooned, and so in my head I say hail and sooned, but I think it's just sound. It's you're of sound body and mind. It's hail and sound, but the thing I'm taking it for is in a dialect where it's pronounced sooned.
Yeah.
So that's just me being a weirdo. Anything on hail and sound?
I think it's great. Amazing way for the class to get expertise in something. It doesn't have a lot to really do outside of combat, and I think this is a perfect way of kind of giving them that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But good.
Healer's Step. Prerequisite. Chirurgeon Bloodline 3rd level. And I am just now realizing that my augmentations that I came up with for the Chirurgeon have the prerequisites in the wrong order. You've mastered the art of getting out of the way on the battlefield. When you use your Vascular Overload feature, creatures have disadvantage on attacks of opportunity made against you until the end of your turn.
I think it's good.
It's just supposed to help you a little bit with your battlefield mobility. I don't give you disengage on Vascular Overload, but I thought that giving them disadvantage on the attacks of opportunity was a pretty good compromise.
It's comparable.
Hungry Flesh. Prerequisite. Scarlet Knight Bloodline. You're able to form a parasitic bond with your enemies. Whenever you deal damage with a melee attack, you can spend a blood point. If you do, you regain a number of hit points equal to half the damage dealt by the attack. Once you spend a blood point in this way, you can't do so again until the beginning of your next turn.
I wrote, this is very reminiscent of Fountain of Ages effect, but the class does need its healing. That the Hemoturge uses its healing. I wrote, what if you rolled a blood die and added the results to the damage and regained that roll and hit points as well, as opposed to it being based on the whole damage roll.
I'd be worried of this stepping on the toes of Eye for an Eye then. But I'm gonna be honest. The Fountain of Ages was based on this. I came up with this first.
Oh, I see.
I will say Fountain of Ages too. Like the number of hit points you add isn't like you get from that one attack might be okay. Like it could be decent damage because that that subclass isn't really for damage.
One that's the thing. The Chirurgeon isn't dealing a ton of damage, so it's much more ribbony on Fountain of Ages than it is on the Scarlet Knight.
Well, unless you get a decent weapon from your DM.
True.
Well,
yes, this is always an option. Well, but I mean, it would have to be a good, simple weapon because Chirurgeons don't get martial weapon proficiencies.
Like a dagger.
Yeah, just like a nice dagger, good old legendary dagger.
I mean, actually, not even a poison. If you learn how to do poison with your weapons, like if you get like Poisoner's Kit and like your DM allows you to just like get like, I don't know, a D6 to your damage die, that's not bad.
Yeah. So do you think Hungry Flesh needs to be buffed, or do you think it just needs to be different?
I think it needs to. I think like Eye for an Eye, it might need to.
I think because of the fact that Scarlet Knight is going to be expected to do a lot more damage, and it's probably like, I know we can't really take magic items too much to account, but a Scarlet Knight is going to be far more likely to get a good magical weapon than any of the other subclasses besides Juggernaut. Now that we're giving extra attack, which means that this is going to be strong if they get a really just a decent magic item, because it's just the attacks damage. It's not like the dice or anything like that, which is why I suggested the blood die thing.
Okay. I'm worried about that because this is available with no prereqs, and so at second level, adding a D4 to your attacks at pretty low cost.
Well, you could just make it not add your D4 and just roll the die to get the health back. You don't have to add the damage to the attack.
Yeah.
Roll a blood die, regain that many hit. Actually, I like that. Yeah, no, don't add any damage. Just when you hit a creature, when you deal damage with a melee attack, spend a blood point, roll a blood die, gain that many hit points. Yeah. That's fine. I like that. Okay. Incision, prereq, Blood Mage, Bloodline. You learn Inflict Wounds. You can cast it without a spell slot for 2 blood points. That's
I think I just said that was cool. Hold on, let me double check. Incision. I think this is fine. Maybe it doesn't need the long rest restriction. I don't think it needs the long rest restriction, I'm gonna be honest.
Okay, you think you should be able to just pump blood points into casting Inflict Wounds?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah. Since we're doing them in like linked pairs, there's also Transfusion. It gives you Cure Wounds and is otherwise exactly the same.
Yeah.
Same thing, yeah.
I think it's the same thing because there is the Healing Monk, which would end up being a similar type of thing where they can use key points to get healing, and this would be more expensive because it's 2 blood points instead of 1 key point.
Sure. Yeah, I'm fine with removing the long rest restriction. I just I was concerned about spamming it, but I think it's fine, especially since your blood points are a non-trivial cost. Yeah. Invigorating Resilience, prereq, 10th level. Your body has become inured to a certain element, protecting you from its harms and even restoring some of your power when struck. When you gain this augmentation, choose one of the following damage types: acid, fire, cold, or lightning. You gain resistance to the chosen damage type. Whenever you take damage of the chosen type, you can make a DC 15 Constitution check. If you succeed, you gain 1 blood point. You cannot choose this augmentation multiple times. However, if you replace this augmentation and later regain it, you can choose a different damage type the second time.
I wrote that I don't think the check is necessary. I think that if you just take damage of that type...
Especially if we're turning blood points into a short rest resource, I don't feel the need to be as stingy about you regaining them. Yeah. I'm fine with that. I was reluctant to turn blood points into a short rest resource until I playtested all of the subclasses. Yeah. And I totally agree with you now. So yeah, I think that losing the con check on this is fine, and that blood points should be a short rest resource.
I do think that the wording for the augmentation, I think it'd be fine to just say you can change the damage type per level up or something like that, as opposed to you have to drop it and then later get it again.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be willing to change that language to just say, like, whenever you gain a level in this class, you can change the chosen damage type.
Yeah.
Irrevocable health. You gain finer control over your body's functions. While you're conscious, you're immune to poison and disease. Probably doesn't need the conscious rider.
I don't think so, and I also think that this should be 10th level to match the monk. The monk gets this at 10th level. Or at least 6th level.
Yeah.
What level do paladins get this at?
Paladins don't.
Paladins become immune to disease at 3rd level, but how fucking often does disease pop up?
Paladins don't get anything for poison. They get lay on hands, which removes poisons, but that's it.
I think level 6 would be
a 6 at least.
I'll give you 6. I don't feel like it's as.
So we keep on saying poison isn't that crazy. It's not that crazy to the monsters. To the players, having resist the poison is pretty damn good because monsters feel that shit.
Well, but this doesn't give you immunity to the damage, only to the condition.
Then you shouldn't say that it begins.
Oh, then you should say the condition then, because when you say immune to poison, that means damage type.
Wait, monks get immunity to poison damage?
Yeah.
I was not under the impression that that's what their ability did.
Yeah, no. They're immune to poison and disease. It's pretty much this exact wording, but they're immune to poison damage because of it.
I took this wording from that feature. I didn't think that included poison damage.
It does.
Oh, it does.
What the fuck? Okay, yeah, let's call this a 10th level augmentation.
Okay.
I did not know that this was... No, okay, I didn't think... That was not my intention. Kinetic Contest. The ability to shift your body into second gear makes you a wrestler to be reckoned with. When you use your Vascular Overload feature, you gain advantage on ability checks you make to shove or grapple a creature until the start of your next turn.
Dope.
Good.
Hell yeah. Menacing Presence. Prereq. Juggernaut Bloodline. Your sheer toughness makes you an intimidating combatant, drawing the attention of your foes away from others. As an action, you can spend a blood point and choose any number of creatures you can see within 10 feet of you that can see you. Those creatures Wisdom saving throw. The DC of the saving throw is equal to 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your con mod. Any creature failing the saving throw has disadvantage on attacks against creatures other than you until the start of your next turn.
So my note here was like, this is a decent answer to the fact that Juggernauts don't have anything to bring attention to themselves. This is a decent answer to that. I do think even with this, the subclass needed something. So I'm still going to give them extra attack, but I like this feature for that reason.
Okay, excellent. I think that's fine. I think when you've got augmentations available, it's fine if one of them is kind of core to something working perfectly. Like,
yeah.
Reinforced plating, we already talked about. Oh,
well,
savor the.
I do just have one quick thing for menacing presence.
Sure.
I think it should be a little bit farther range, just to kind of once again talk about like kind of making creatures
pulling aggro in, not just keeping enemies near you. Sure. I could up to 20 feet?
Yeah, 20 feet. 20
yeah, I wrote that. I said maybe 30. I mean, anything. I think bigger than 10 is the biggest takeaway.
Sure.
Yeah,
so that you can pull creatures that aren't in your range yet. You can pull them away from your party. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like if you want to make it like farther range, then make it like a number of creatures you can see up to your Constitution modifier.
I think that any number is still fine as long as it's less than 20 feet. So 20 I think is my cap for not capping the number of creatures, but I think that's fine. Savor the Pain, Prereq, 6th level, Blood Mage Bloodline. You are no stranger to your own flesh and blood, and as such, only the most debilitating attacks can impair your ability to focus on your spellcasting. Whenever you would make a Constitution saving throw to maintain concentration due to taking damage, you automatically succeed instead if the DC of the saving throw is 12 or less.
So, I think 12 is a bit arbitrary. I think the more elegant approach is rolling a 5 or lower is a 5, and that way it scales with your leveling as well.
Wait, rolling a 5 or lower? Hold on, what am I missing?
If you roll a 5 or a lower on the die, it's treated as a 5. Basically like reliable talent, except for concentration checks. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. That way it scales with your level. Like, technically, it scales with your level, and I don't know, it feels less arbitrary. Everything's arbitrary, but it feels less arbitrary.
I'm going to be honest, that's what I wanted the ability to originally be. I felt like just picking a DC was the more elegant solution.
I think Wizards has dabbled into the roll below a number, get that number thing enough at this point. So I think it's fair game.
They've done it. I just still feel like it's inelegant.
I like it a lot, and I think it's elegant. So
I think it's a cool ability. I just think it's inelegant.
I'm glad that we have me and Adam seem to have a very different, varying like perception on like how things are like designed, which I think is interesting.
we have a different design ethos, which I think is part of what makes these conversations interesting. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have the exact same perspective on everything.
Yeah.
I just exist. I'm just like, this ability sounds cool. How can we make it balanced, and how can we make it into the game?
I mean, hell yeah, man. An extra perspective is always welcome. Snappy Sinew. Bones and ligaments twist at your command, giving you an additional burst of movement. When you use your Vascular Overload feature, your walking speed increases by 10 feet until the beginning of your next turn.
I think it's good.
I think this one's. I had originally written that maybe it could use an additional ribbon of disadvantage opportunity attacks, but then you already have a feature like that for the Chirurgeon that I read after I read this one, so I was like, that's fine.
Well, and also, you can take the dodge action with your Vascular Overload.
Yeah. And then move away.
Or you could disengage as an action. Like,
yeah. And then dash as an action, as a bonus action.
Disengage as an action, dash as a Vascular Overload action, and you're getting your Snappy Sinew increase, so that dash takes you up to 80 feet of movement. Nice.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Supple Flesh, prereq, 10th level. You can cast Alter Self once per long rest.
I think this shouldn't have the once per long rest restriction. And I think it shouldn't be you casting a spell. I think it should replicate the spell of Alter, or the effect of Alter Spell. Or Alter Self.
I personally hate that wording, but I understand why you want it that way, because this is a physical modification that you're making. You aren't actually casting the spell.
I don't want this to be dispelled from you, and I don't want this to be inedible or unusable in an anti-magic field is the thing. I also don't want it to be counterspelled or noticeably cast. I want you to just be able to do it innately.
Okay, yeah, you can handle the wording changes for that then, because I think those words are ugly. Spring Steel's Tendons, prereq, 14th level. You've been able to strengthen your legs in such a way that you can leap incredible distances. You can cast Jump, targeting yourself at will, without material components and without using a spell slot. I'm guessing you would like the same language here?
Again, make it innate. Yeah. This one's easy though. This one you can just say your jump speed's tripled. Boom, you're done.
I would also
or jump distance.
I would also lower the level requirement for this, because 14th level's kind of.
Yeah, I think this is extremely high for.
Yeah, for jump at will. It's like.
Yeah, I chose the prereq level just based on the fact that you're casting a spell at will, without regard to the fact that it's kind of a shitty spell. So yeah, it could easily be a lower prereq level.
Well, the wizard also gets jump at will at a lower level, so. Or not the wizard, the warlock. Sorry.
Okay, I was gonna say no. I don't think they do. Symbiosis, prerequisite, Chirurgeon, Bloodline, 6th level.
Oh.
When you use your abilities to heal others, your own blood responds in turn, healing you slightly. When you use your unnatural recovery feature on a creature other than yourself, you regain a number of hit points equal to your con mod.
I think this one can just be you also get the full recovery.
The reason I didn't do that is because then you never have a reason to use unnatural recovery on yourself ever again.
Sure.
There is
okay, that's fine.
There is some caveat there, but I will say that this does also kind of come into the thing for where it's like, usually it's like, okay, do I hold out so that way I take some damage, so that way I can heal someone else when we like benefit equally? Do I just heal them and get like 2 health points? Like, I think there is some merit to what Shawn had said, for both of you get like that amount of healing.
Yeah, if you guys think that's fine, I think it's fine. This isn't as strong as I wanted it to be, because I still wanted you to be encouraged to use unnatural recovery on yourself sometimes. But if you think it's fine to buff it like that, I think it's fine. Transfusion we already talked about. Venus Correction, prerequisite, Chirurgeon Bloodline, 10th level. You can cast Lesser Restoration once without using a spell slot, once per long rest.
I said you could probably put a BP cost on this without the rest restriction.
What do you think? 2 BP for no long rest restriction?
I think that's reasonable. Lesser Restoration is a 2nd level spell, no material components needed.
Maybe it should be 3 BP, because for the Blood Mage we've got 2 BP for 1st level spells.
The Blood Mage we have 2 BP for 1st levels. Oh, for inflict wounds and cure wounds.
Yeah, for transfusion and incision.
Yeah, but they also learn the spells. The Chirurgeons,
True, yeah,
they only just get to use it with their BP.
Okay, yeah, then I think 2 BP and no long rest limitation is fine.
Yeah, and I mean it's not like lesser restoration. Yeah, it's good. It's good for whenever like something is being affected by it, but otherwise it's just there.
It's
You might.
good when it's good, and it's bad when it's not.
Yo,
like,
man,
you
do
don't-
I not miss Pathfinder where spells were only good when they're good and they're awful otherwise?
Yeah.
Lesser
and
Restoration was
then-
like 6 fucking spells in Pathfinder.
Yeah. And then the most important part, multiclassing. If you are using the optional multiclassing rules from the player's handbook, the ability score prerequisite for the Hemoturge is Constitution 13. When you take a level in Hemoturge that is not your first character level, you gain proficiency in simple weapons and light armor. Additionally, if you have the Blood Mage Bloodline, add 1/3 of your Hemoturge levels rounded up to your spellcaster level for the purposes of determining your spell slots.
Woo!
I don't care.
I
I was thinking,
what were
like,
you going to
does it-
quibble about?
The getting proficiency and stuff, it just seemed like you don't get proficiency and stuff if you take multiclass and other levels, besides fucking fighter, and I think paladin and ranger,
You get proficiencies for most multi-classes.
in armor and weapons.
Not armor and weapons, but you get something.
Yeah, you usually get like a skill proficiency in rogue, bard, and ranger. But most of them, no, you don't get anything. I don't think.
Okay.
I'm 100% could be wrong.
Okay, dude, multi-classing into Warlock gives you light armor and simple weapons.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cleric.
the only ones that give you nothing are Sorcerer and Wizard.
No, I literally the only ones that I multiclass into are the ones that give you things. So I don't know that table off the top of my head. Then yeah, this is fine.
Excellent, cool. I thought you were going to fight me about the rounding up for Blood Mage, but you have to do that because they get spells at level 1, damn it.
Yeah, no, they round up in the back of the DMG as well.
They round down for the half-casters, but you round up for Artificer because they're a half-caster who gets spells at level 1.
That's weird. If you had the Blood Mage Bloodline, you add 1/3 Hemoturge level to spellcast level for the purposes of determining your spell slot. Why can't you round down for that?
Because if you round down, then until level 3, it counts you as having 0 levels in spellcasting. I mean, you could say
that's
round
fair.
down with a minimum of 1, but I think it's more elegant to just say round up, especially since that's already the solution that they use for the Artificer.
Is that the solution made for the Artificer? Then I don't care.
Yeah, it's what they did for the Artificer. That's where I got the language from.
Oh. I don't think I have a multi-classing thing for the Magus. I guess they have to round up as well because they also get their stuff at 1. All right. Well, that was the Hemoturge.
Hell yeah. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and we're taking next week off because it's my goddamn birthday. And also, I need to go to sleep because I'm waking up for work in less than 8 hours. So
Everyone is invited to Adam's birthday.
no,
Y'all are invited.
you aren't all invited. I
You are
love
all
you, but
invited
you
in
aren't all
spirit.
invited.
I mean, the only people in the chat are fucking Justin, Sid, and Zach. They're not invited.
Oh,
Yeah, what
okay,
the
yes,
fuck?
all of those people are invited. I just didn't want to invite a bunch of strangers, you know? I don't know what kind of strange people are in our chats.
That's true.
Justin, Sid, and Zach.
That is a bunch of strange people. All right. Well, that was the Hemoturge. It as we expected, it was gonna be. It's a long discussion. It could have been longer, but I think
Honestly, we could have talked a lot more about a lot of these things. We
could've.
started rushing it at the end.
I think the augmentations got the attention they needed to get. Most of them are
Yeah.
perfectly fine. I mean, it's not hard to create like an invocation level like ability. Honestly,
Well,
really though.
you say that, but I am totally fucking tapped for ideas. Like, I've been trying to come up with more augmentations for months. And
I guess
the only ones I've come...
I guess I mean, like,
only
if you have the idea, it's not hard to balance it to the correct level.
Right, yeah. The only ones I've come up with since I made the original class are the Chirurgeon ones. And that's just because I was like, well, I need to have some subclass specific augmentations. So,
but that was a hoot. I'm glad we could finally have like a full discussion about this. The first time we talked about this was over Facebook chat, and I said a lot of stuff, and I was at work, so I didn't really get to say all the things I wanted to say. But I think we got through a lot of stuff here. We got some modifications we want to try and look at. I'm going to let Adam take a few days to like make the edits that he wants to make based on this conversation. And then next week we're going to be discussing it. We're not going to have next week on the podcast. We're not going to post this until next week. So I guess if you're watching this on YouTube, this will actually be maybe later than anyway. We're gonna go ahead and move on. We don't have a plan for 2 weeks from now what we're gonna do. It's gonna be a surprise what we do for that week. So because we didn't discuss it and we have a week off and we really need to get this in order instead. So we're gonna go leave it off there. Was there any last words you guys had?
The last word for tonight is blood.
Tomatoes are not the same thing as tomatoes. Don't let people tell you otherwise.
Wise words. Could you use that word in a sentence, Adam?
No.
All right. Well, all that is lost must be found, and all that is found must be remembered. See you next week.